Chapter 480. At the entrance of the southern land. A huge array formation that looked like a golden ribbon was floating above the Spirit River. Countless talismans lit up from it, and the golden light was very bright. Every time the light grew brighter, the white mist above the Spirit River became thinner. And every 2 meters near the Spirit River, there was a cultivator setting up the array. At first there seemed to be more than 20 of them. Each of their cultivation was not low, the lowest was at the early stage of soul formation. They were working together to destroy the Spirit River in front of them. Behind these foreign cultivators stood countless cultivators. At a rough glance, there were several thousand of them, and they occupied the vast wasteland in front of the river. Some of them even stopped in the air on their swords. They were divided into several camps. There were hundreds of people standing together and dozens of people at the least. Looking at their clothes, they all belonged to different sections. It seemed that all the high-level cultivators in the entire Sacred Arrival realm had come out in full force. The largest group was the Divine Imperial Sect cultivators who occupied the front. They had the most high-level cultivators. There were more than 10 soul formation cultivators, not to mention 5 traveling immortals. All of them frowned as they looked at the Spirit River in front of them. The cultivators spent more than an hour before they worked together to stir up the entire Spirit River. The white fog in front of them became thinner and thinner. The scenery of the southern land became clearer. When the white fog completely dissipated, everyone was ready to rush in. Roar, 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 roar. Suddenly dozens of beast roars sounded at the same time. Like thousands of thunder, the array formation shook. A gust of wind mixed with a violent aura swept towards the cultivators. The high-level cultivators of each sect hurriedly set up a protective array formation to protect their disciples. Only then did everyone see clearly that there was a large group of demon beasts standing on the other side of the river. And all of them were above level 8 and there were even level 10. Some were as strong as mountains and some were in human form. At first glance there were hundreds of them. Their eyes were filled with anger as they looked at the cultivators on the other side. They seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Perhaps it was the first time they saw so many high-level demon beasts at the same time. The cultivators' hearts sank. These demon beasts were obviously here to stop them. The leader of the Divine Imperial Sect, traveling immortal Sun Yu, frowned even more. A hint of annoyance flashed across his eyes, but it wasn't because he was worried that they couldn't subdue hundreds of high-level demon beasts, but because if they were to fight, it would definitely take up too much time, and it would be detrimental to their search. Just as he was thinking, the herd of demonic beasts suddenly roared in unison and parted to the sides, opening a path. 2 men, 1 gray and 1 white, walked out. The man in white had a monstrous aura around him, and even the expressions of the soul formation cultivators present changed. This was a 12th-ranked demon king. As for the person beside him, it was a ball? No, it was a man as fat as a ball and his facial features looked a little familiar. The eyes of everyone from Divine Imperial Sect lit up as they stared at the person on the right. Huizhe. Sun Yu shouted subconsciously. You bunch of human cultivators, how dare you barge into my southern land and destroy my Spirit River? Are you tired of living? Do you want me to send you to hell? Rabbit snorted coldly. The demonic aura around him intensified and he pounced towards the crowd. Sun Yu's eyes darkened, and he glanced at Fatty who was standing beside the Demon King before stepping forward and saying, Demon King. We originally had no intention to provoke a battle between the demon and beast clans, but you colluded with heretical cultivators, kidnapped our sect master, and hid here for several years. As a disciple of Divine Imperial Sect, how can we not care about what you do? With that said, he looked at Fatty again and a hint of greed flashed across his eyes. Today all the cultivators are gathered here, hurry up and release our sect master, otherwise don't blame us for flattening the southern land. I'm not your sect master. Fatty's face darkened, and he felt that the word, sect master, was extremely disgusting. He said directly, Brother Rabbit didn't kidnap me at all and neither did Master and the others. All these years, because of my special physique, you guys used me as a blood sacrifice time and time again, and used my flesh and blood to raise your cultivation. If not for Master and the others arriving in time last time, I would have died in the blood array long ago. Once these words came out, everyone was shocked, and they all looked towards the people of Divine Imperial Sect in the middle. Using the blood and flesh of living people to raise cultivation, such a shocking thing was completely unheard of. As the leader of the immortal sects, would Divine Imperial Sect really do such a thing? Sect Master, you are still inexperienced, don't be fooled by those heretical cultivators. Sun Yu, however, didn't panic at all, and there was not even a hint of guilt on his face. Instead he looked pained and worried. That heretical cultivator kidnapped you with impure intentions in the first place. That's why he would use these words to deceive you. Our sect is indebted to your ancestors. How can we do such a thing that is worse than beast? Moreover, using blood and flesh as a sacrifice to raise cultivation is really absurd. How can there be such a strange thing in this world? Indeed, no matter how powerful the cultivators in this world were, they were only flesh and blood. Everyone was the same. If flesh and blood could really raise cultivation, not to mention ordinary cultivators, even those fiendish cultivators who often came into contact with corpses and Inchi would all have extremely high cultivation. Everyone nodded. They were sure that this fatty was deceived by others to believe such absurd words. Moreover, sect master, your body has been weak since you were young. We were eager to save you, so we had to use some special methods. There would be some pain during the treatment. Sun Yu continued to explain, his expression even more worried. But this is all for the good of sect master. Treatment of pain? Fatty laughed out loud. What kind of serious illness do I have that I need to cut off my arms, cut open my abdomen, cut my flesh and let out my blood once every 7 days? He suddenly felt that it was meaningless. Clearly when Master saved him that day, he should have seen clearly what kind of demons they were. Why was it that until now he still hoped that perhaps they would have that little bit of guilt in their hearts? Master was right, some people did so many bad things that they wouldn't think it was a bad thing anymore. The principle of the world was never as hard as the fist. Forget it. The reason is no longer important. Fatty sighed. His whole body felt relaxed for no reason, as if something that had been pressing on his shoulders for many years was suddenly removed. Today I only fight for my own justice. His eyes darkened. The aura of the soul formation stage was instantly released from his whole body, faintly overshadowing the aura of all the cultivators present. You have cultivation, that restriction. Sun Yu's eyes widened abruptly. He exclaimed out loud. Halfway through his words he stopped hurriedly, his face full of disbelief. He didn't realize that the demonic aura was too strong just now. He didn't expect that he had actually become a soul formation cultivator. How long had he been in the southern land? No matter how talented a cultivator was, it was impossible to reach the soul formation stage so quickly, unless he had some kind of miraculous encounter. The restriction that you guys set in my consciousness is not unbreakable. Fatty directly spoke for him. With a turn of his hand, he summoned a spirit sword. Sun Yu's expression darkened. He still maintained that look of moral superiority just now. He pretended to have a pained expression. Now that sect master has been deceived by scoundrels, looks like you won't listen to our advice. Never mind. We can only save you out of the southern land first, then find a chance to slowly tell you in detail. Chapter 481. Sun Yu let out a long sigh, and turned to look at the cultivators of the various sections. Fellow Taoists, the demons of the southern land have been causing trouble for a long time, and now they are colluding with heretical cultivators. This is really unforgivable. Please follow my divine imperial sect to exterminate the demons and defend the Tao. The leading cultivators of the various sects exchanged glances. Although the southern land was closed all year round, the various sects still had some understanding of it. It was said that there were 7 demon kings in the southern land, and they fought among themselves and were not united. Now there was only one. Although there were many high-level demon beasts with him, as long as the various sects joined forces, they could still fight against him. So they didn't think much and were about to respond. Suddenly, a series of loud roars came from the depths of the southern land. Dust filled the sky behind the demons, and with a series of rumbling sounds, a large amount of thick demon aura was approaching here. Even the ground was shaking, as if thousands of troops and horses were galloping over. In a short while, everyone saw clearly what it was. Demon beasts. It was countless demon beasts rushing over in a frenzy, densely packed together. Even the originally dense forest was pressed down. The demons and beasts were so densely packed that they couldn't see the end. Such a large beast tide, not to mention them, even if all the cultivators of the entire sacred arrival world came, they might not be able to stop it. And at a glance, each demon beast's cultivation was not low. When they got closer, they even found that there were 6 shocking demon auras in front of the herd. They were obviously 12th level demon kings. The 7 demon kings of the southern land were actually all here. If they joined forces, the various sects' cultivators felt a chill in their hearts, and their faces turned pale. Fortunately, the demon beasts of the southern land had always been their own witnesses. It shouldn't be so easy for them to join forces. The sky full of demon beasts rushed all the way, and only stopped in front of the Spirit River. The 6 leading demon kings walked up directly, and then turned and knelt down in the direction of Rabbit without hesitation, and spoke in unison. Reporting to my king, I have already gathered the demon army, and came under orders. Rabbit nodded and gestured for them to get up. Thank you for your hard work, Demon Kings. This is our duty. I dare not say it was hard work. Leopard King, who had finally grown new claws, hurriedly replied. Lion King also said, guarding the southern land, demons have rules. That's right. The other Demon Kings also nodded. These human cultivators actually dared to invade our southern land, destroyed our spirit river, and even dared to boast shamelessly in front of us, the myriad Demon King. Do they really think our southern land is a pushover? As they spoke, they glared angrily at the cultivators on the other side of the river as if they would have bitten them to death if their king had not given the order. Everyone. Didn't they say that they didn't have a good relationship with the southern demon monarch? Also, when did they have 1,000 goblin king? The cultivators couldn't help but look at the rabbit at the front. They were clearly all at the 12th level, so why were the demon kings willing to serve that rabbit demon as their king? The cultivators' hearts sank. Suddenly they didn't dare to act rashly. They couldn't help but feel lucky that they didn't have time to respond to Divine Imperial Sect's invitation to battle just now. It should be known that the cultivation of a 12th level demon king and a traveling immortal was not much different. Moreover, the demon race was naturally strong. They might not be able to gain the upper hand, not to mention there were 7 of them. Not to mention those 10th and 11th rank beasts, they did not even dare to look at the numbers. Everyone from Divine Imperial Sect paled, not knowing what to do. Brother Rabbit. Fatty said directly, today's matter is only between me and Divine Imperial Sect. It has nothing to do with others. There's no need to cause a conflict between the two races. Let us settle it ourselves. Brother Fatty. The rabbit panicked and wanted to say something. But looking at Fatty's determined eyes, it swallowed the words that were at the tip of its tongue. On the way here, Fatty had already explained his matter clearly to it. Naturally, it understood his thoughts, so it took a step back and turned to look at the cultivators of the various sections. Listen, I cannot pursue the matter of you trespassing into my southern land today. But my brother has to settle the score with Divine Imperial Sect. This has nothing to do with others. If others dare to interfere, then my demon race doesn't mind interfering as well. Its meaning was clear. It was Fatty's business to settle the score with Divine Imperial Sect. If others were to help Divine Imperial Sect, then they would fight. The cultivators of the various sects looked at each other for a while. No one dared to stand out easily. After all, between a personal grudge and a war between the two races, no one would choose the latter. In addition, Fatty was only one person, while Divine Imperial Sect had more than 10 soul formation cultivators and 3 traveling immortals. It was obvious who would win. Fatty took a few steps forward and pointed the sword in his hand at Sun Yu. Which one of you will come first or together? Sun Yu sighed, looking like he had no choice. Since Sect Master insists, then don't blame me for offending you. He summoned his Dharma artifact. The two figures flashed and instantly fought together. Sun Yu activated the Dharma artifact in his hand. In an instant, a net made of spirit chi fell towards Fatty. That net was so big that it seemed to be able to cover the entire sky. There was also a strong coercion on it. Wherever it passed, all the spells that Fatty summoned were all absorbed into it. It looked like the whole person was about to be caught in the net too. Was over. Sun Yu sighed. He didn't take Fatty seriously at all. After all, no matter how powerful he was only a soul formation cultivator while he was a traveling immortal. Just as he was about to keep his Dharma artifact, a figure flashed in the net and suddenly disappeared inside. Sun Yu was shocked. Before he could react, he felt a huge pain in his waist. Fatty, who was originally still in the net, suddenly appeared behind him and kicked towards him. He didn't notice it for a moment and directly fell from the sky with a thud. He ate a mouthful of mud. Sun Yu crawled up in disbelief. How was this possible? He had clearly used his Dharma artifact to suppress him. How could he still escape? Before he could be shocked, Fatty's next wave of attack had already arrived. He saw several fire dragons descend from the sky and directly fall towards his direction. His heart sank. He didn't dare to underestimate the other party anymore. He hurriedly summoned a large amount of water vapor and condensed it into a stream of water to counterattack. That stream of water was like a chain and wrapped around the fire dragon, wanting to completely extinguish the water dragon. But just as it wrapped around the dragon, several lightning bolts suddenly appeared on the dragon's body. Not only did his stream of water not extinguish it, it instead caused the lightning bolts to flourish. The entire fire dragon instantly became several times thicker, bringing with it crackling lightning. With a rumbling sound, the fire dragon charged down. It was already too late for Sun Yu to dodge. He could only hurriedly lay down a defensive barrier, but it was completely useless. Those lightning bolts instantly broke through his defense and swallowed him whole. Ah! Sun Yu instantly let out a tragic cry. If not for the Dharma robe on his body, his entire body would probably have been completely burned. However, his exposed skin was still burned. The intense pain caused him to directly roll on the ground. But the fire dragons in the sky were not done yet. Immediately after, several fire dragons once again descended. Chapter 482. Seeing that Sun Yu had nowhere to hide and was about to disappear completely in the lightning and fire dragons, the people of Divine Imperial Sect finally reacted. 2 traveling immortals and a few soul formation cultivators rushed out and blocked the remaining fire dragons, saving Sun Yu. Everyone was shocked. Everyone could see that Fatty was only at the late stage of soul formation, but in less than a quarter of an hour, he had defeated a traveling immortal. His strength was undeniably shocking. Whether it was the heretic cultivator who had yet to show himself or the myriad demon king in front of them, it was obvious that it would not be so easy to take Wuxia away today. The cultivators of Divine Imperial Sect all darkened their faces and exchanged a look. The remaining 2 traveling immortals and 2 soul formation cultivators, the 4 of them turned and attacked Fatty at the same time, fighting again. Not far away in the hidden array, a certain crowd of 3 was drinking tea and eating melon seeds, watching the battle calmly. 1 against 4? Xining tilted her head. 1 against 4 is nothing, Fatty is an all-rounder cultivator after all. Lone Moon said indifferently. Oh, then how many can he fight at most? I bet 3 months of food expenses at least 7. Lone Moon said confidently. Xinying's eyes darted around and brightened. Then I'll bet 3 fruits 8. I Ching looked back and forth between the 2 in order to appear more sociable. He cooperated and added, I bet 3 meals 10. Lone Moon, Xining, was there a difference whether you bet or not? Which meal wasn't cooked by you? As the few of them spoke, the few people fighting over there were slowly coming to an end. Lone Moon's guess was right. Even if the 4 of them attacked together, they did not gain the upper hand in Fatty's hands. Instead, they were faintly being suppressed by Fatty's endless and completely different sorcery. The cultivators of Divine Imperial Sect who were watching the battle below couldn't help it anymore, so more and more people joined the battle. In the end, there were already more than 10 soul formation cultivators and traveling immortals attacking Fatty together. But Fatty's sorcery was really too smooth, all kinds of sorcery stacked together. It looked like fire element, but there was also thunder element mixed in. In the end, it was ice element and wind element. Until the last moment, no one could think of a complete way to deal with it, and he also set up a few array formations from time to time. Often, as they fought, before they could even react, they would already be trapped in his array. It wasn't just the people fighting, even the other sects couldn't believe their eyes. They didn't expect him to be able to fight against so many cultivators of the same level and even higher level by himself. More than 10 years ago he was still a mere mortal. In less than an hour, many soul formation cultivators were hit, falling from the sky one after another, looking even worse than Sun Yu. The more they watched, the more shocked they were. Finally, all the soul formation cultivators and traveling immortals of Divine Imperial Sect attacked together. For a moment, the sky was filled with the light of sorcery. The battle went on for several hours. There were only a few dozen soul formation cultivators and 1 traveling immortal left in the sky. Of course, there was also Fatty. His body was covered in wounds and his robe was stained with blood. The long battle had consumed a lot of energy. His face was already showing signs of fatigue, but he still looked at the people in front of him with a resolute gaze. He could not lose this battle. And the people of Divine Imperial Sect also obviously fought with all their strength, seeming to see that he was already at the end of his rope, and attacked even more intensively. Dozens of sorcery flew towards Fatty, and someone even set up a trapping array. A golden array formation instantly formed above his head. And this time he had nowhere to retreat. Fatty only felt his chi and blood surging, and he knelt down on one knee, and the sorcery that was still attacking the people just now also started to become unstable. After all, under the siege of more than 10 soul formation cultivators, no matter how good Fatty's 5-element sorcery was, this was already the limit. The wounds on his body increased, and his movements became slower and slower. And the people of Divine Imperial Sect didn't have it easy either. This trapping array had already exhausted the last spirit chi of the person who set it up. When the others saw that Fatty was trapped inside, they immediately created a sky full of icicles, lightning, spirit swords, and used the last bit of strength to attack. Success or failure depended on this one move. Seeing that the trapping array was getting brighter and brighter, and that the sky full of sorcery was about to blast Fatty into pieces, Fatty gritted his teeth, and suddenly, in an instant, an unprecedented huge burst of spirit chi exploded, and his originally round body suddenly began to expand crazily, like a rapidly expanding rubber ball. His figure suddenly became hundreds of times bigger, directly breaking the trapping array, and withstanding everyone's sorcery. The sky full of sorcery hit his huge ball-shaped body but actually had no effect at all. There's still this move. The master and disciple group of onlookers all turned to look at a certain Dean. What are you looking at? Lone Moon directly glared back. What the hell is this misleading look of yours? I'm making use of his strengths, do you understand? The two of them. Society. On the other side, Fatty, who had already turned into a huge rubber ball, had already begun to spin. For a moment, the wind and clouds surged. Before the surrounding soul formation cultivators could react, they were instantly thrown out by the surrounding astral winds, together with their own sorcery attacks. Instantly, everyone was like dumplings falling from the sky with a thud. And Fatty directly rose into the air, flew into the sky, and smashed down. The speed was shocking, and the people who had exhausted their spirit chi had no way to dodge at all, could only watch as a huge, earth-shattering meatball fell from the sky, directly smashing towards them. Then there was a loud boom. Instantly, a huge pit more than 10 meters long appeared on the ground, and the surrounding was even more cracked inch by inch. For a moment, the earth shook and the mountains swayed. Even the surrounding sects had to set up arrays and fly on their swords to avoid being affected. And the people of Divine Imperial Sect had long been crushed into meat patties. Only a dozen or so weak auras remained, proving that they were still alive, but it was not known if they could survive, let alone if their cultivation could be preserved. Father Nyo, this isn't a move of a body cultivator, is it? I Ching said subconsciously, not to mention the sudden transformation. Such a strong body to be able to crush a soul formation cultivator like this, it could only be a body cultivator. Shut up. Who said he was a body cultivator? Fatty definitely couldn't be a body cultivator, definitely not. Only then did Fatty return to his original appearance. His situation was not good. This move had already used up all his spirit chi. His whole body was almost turning into a blood ball. His body stumbled a few times, but he struggled to not fall. Sweeping a glance at the Divine Imperial Sect cultivators all over the ground, he won. He really won. His tense nerves finally relaxed. The corner of his mouth involuntarily lifted into a smile. He subconsciously turned back, looking in the direction of Rabbit. He wanted to immediately go back and tell Master that he did it, but just happened to see Rabbit's shocked expression. Watch out! Rabbit shouted. Chapter 483. The Fatty was taken aback. He felt a huge pressure suddenly attacking him, bringing with it an aura that made it impossible for him to resist. The heavily injured Sun Yu suddenly threw something out. The sanctimonious look in his eyes was long gone, and he looked like he wanted to skin Fatty alive. A huge green umbrella suddenly appeared in the sky, surrounded by white light, and a strong pressure swept across a radius of several miles. Be it the cultivators of the various sects or the demons, they all looked horrified. This umbrella was obviously not an item of the mortal world. Soul-absorbing umbrella. Fatty faltered, but it was already too late to dodge. Holy shit. Lone Moon cursed. He couldn't win and actually used an immortal artifact to cheat. Did he think he was dead? He stood up directly and was about to attack, but was pulled back by Shining beside him. Father Nyo. Just as the immortal chi on the umbrella was about to hit Fatty, a Buddhist name suddenly came from the sky, and instantly dispelled the attack on the umbrella. Amit Ba. Everyone heard a series of bells ringing, and they saw a bald man in a kasaya flying over on a lotus platform. His entire body was emitting a faint golden Buddhist light. Compared to the other handsome cultivators, his appearance was very ordinary, but there was a cinnabar dot between his eyebrows that was particularly eye-catching. His entire person gave off an aura of compassion. It's a Buddhist cultivator from Hao Ran Court. Someone recognized the identity of the person, and directly exclaimed. The person waved his hand, and instantly forcibly kept the green umbrella immortal artifact, and bowed to everyone. This poor monk Chanji greets all benefactors. Everyone was shocked, some even widened their eyes, their faces full of disbelief. Chanji? Isn't that the Hao Ran Court Lord? I didn't expect him to actually come personally. Hao Ran Court does not participate in worldly disputes, they only judge the justice of the world. Coming at this time, could it be that someone is doing evil? It seems that there must be something hidden between the people of Divine Imperial Sect and this sect master, that caused Hao Ran Court to act. Everyone began to speculate softly, but without exception, they all had some respectful expressions towards the person who came. Even Fatty's expression softened. Xining tilted her head, glanced at the monk who suddenly appeared, and then turned to look at Lone Moon. "Why are you looking at me?" Lone Moon rolled his eyes. "I don't know who this is. What Hao Ran Court?" He had never heard of it. Chef, on the other hand, frowned and asked subconsciously, "Master, the Buddha light on this person?" Xining nodded. "What Buddha light? This is the golden light of merit, right?" Lone Moon also saw it and subconsciously replied. I Ching opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't. He turned his head and continued to look at the center. The monk called Chanji had already taken the green umbrella and walked towards Sun Yu, who was on the ground. "Taoist son, since you have already lost to this Taoist Hui, why must you stab him in the back, take out your immortal weapon and add to the sins of killing?" Sun Yu's face paled and his expression changed a few times. After a while he hit it again and took out an elixir to eat. Then he replied, "I was wrong. Hui Zhe was originally our sect master and we served him with all our might. For more than 20 years, we never thought that he would not be grateful. He was even deceived by a heretical cultivator and held a grudge against us. I was so angry that I took out my immortal weapon." "Shut up, don't slander my master," Fatty retorted directly. "Master removed the seal on my spirit root and taught me sorcery. He's not a heretical cultivator. He's the best master in the world. You know very well who is deceiving me." Rabbit also hurriedly flew over and supported Fatty, who was on the verge of collapsing. "That's right. How dare you slander great immortal? Do you want to die?" Amit Ba. Chanji sighed and said, "The feud between the two of you has already involved both the human and demon realms. In order to prevent people from dying, my Hao Ran Court naturally cannot sit back and do nothing. If the two of you believe me, why don't I judge for the two of you?" A hint of hesitation flashed across Fatty's eyes. After a while he still nodded. After all, Hao Ran Court was different from Divine Imperial Sect. They did not belong to any sect. It was a place completely independent from the immortal sections. Everyone in the sect hated evil and had enough power. They were an existence that the entire sacred arrival realm looked up to. If a cultivator had any grievances, as long as they could cross the uncrooked sea and find Hao Ran Court, they would definitely come forward to uphold justice. My body constitution is special. I've been imprisoned in Divine Imperial Sect since I was young. After I grew up, every 7 days they would come and take away my flesh and blood. They sacrificed me to raise their cultivation. Fatty recounted his situation from beginning to end, including how the other party had set up restrictions in his sea of consciousness to prevent him from cultivating so that they could better control him. And Sun Yu was the same as before, refusing to admit it. "Sect leader, I know that you have a lot of misunderstandings towards us. That's why you believe in nonsense like the flesh sacrifice array. You couldn't cultivate in the past. I can understand your resentment towards my sect. Now that your cultivation has suddenly increased, I don't know what method the heretic cultivator used on you. You have to be on guard." "My master is not a heretic cultivator." Fatty was obviously no match for the old fox Sun Yu. "Sect master, the 23 soul formation elders of our sect and the traveling immortal elders all treat you sincerely. How can you use sacrificing flesh and blood to slander them without any evidence?" "You, who said we don't have evidence?" Lone Moon could not sit still anymore. He directly appeared beside Fatty. "Master." Fatty was delighted. He was about to step forward when Lone Moon stuffed a handful of pills into his mouth. He swallowed it and coughed. "Meditate and regulate your breath." Lone Moon glared at him. "If you don't know how to speak, then shut up." Fatty's aura visibly weakened. He took a few steps back and obediently sat down to regulate his breath. "It's you?" Sun Yu recognized at one glance that this was the person who took Hui Zhe away. "It's you, this heretic cultivator, who bewitched the sect master." "Heretic cultivator?" Lone Moon laughed coldly. "In this world there are people who call me supremacy, some call me young emperor and some call me daddy. But this is the first time someone called me a heretic cultivator. Let me ask you, which eye of yours saw that I am a heretic cultivator?" "Umph." Sun Yu snorted. "Your cultivation level is strange. You even let Hui Zhe ascend to the soul formation stage in a short span of more than 10 years. This cultivation level is obviously abnormal. Perhaps it's not stable at all. Who knows if there will be problems in the future. To be able to do this, if you're not a heretic cultivator, then what are you? Fatty's cultivation level is unstable? Lone Moon laughed coldly. So you were beaten down by an unstable soul formation cultivator just now? Sun Yu was stumped, unable to say anything from his retort. You're the one who's ignorant and you blame others for being too outstanding. Let's not talk about whether I'm a heretic cultivator or not. But you must be a stupid cultivator, stupid as stupid as stupid. You want to argue with me? Rabbit was taught by me. Other than the Fudiying, he has never lost before. You. Sun Yu was so angry that his face turned red. His chi and blood surged. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 484. Amit Ba. Chan-ji stepped forward at the right time and interrupted the two of them. Fellow Taoist, I wonder what exactly do you mean by the evidence you mentioned just now? Is there any truth to it? Lone Moon laughed coldly. Of course. As he spoke, he took out a white stone. This is an image recording stone. Chan-ji was stunned for a moment and instantly understood what he meant. Could it be that this stone records the truth? Lone Moon did not answer, and directly transmitted a bit of spirit chi to activate the image recording stone in his hand. Immediately, spirit chi gathered above the stone and images appeared. It was the scene of the Divine Imperial Sect's promotion ceremony for that Yusu. He sat in a huge array facing the heavenly lightning. In the next moment, the image flashed and they arrived in a secret room. Fatty lay in the blood sacrifice array, his body full of wounds. Blood flowed into the array, and into the defensive array of the person going through the tribulation. All the sect's expressions changed, and some even turned to look at Sun Yu in disbelief. This did not seem like what he said, the scene of Hui Zhe's weak body being treated. Ridiculous. A trace of panic flashed across Sun Yu's face, but he still defended himself loudly. How can such a brainless scene prove that we did it? Though Hui Zhe is in the blood array, there is no one else beside him. Who knows if you deliberately framed him? You don't want to admit it? Never mind, there's more. Lone Moon laughed mockingly. Indeed, in the next moment the image changed and several figures appeared. It was the scene of 3 traveling immortals from Divine Imperial Sect pressing Fatty into the blood array. This time it was not just an image but also a voice. The 3 people inside could be heard saying, Hui Zhe, you know that Yusu has been at the peak of nascent soul for many years, and his cultivation level has stabilized. It's time for him to advance, yet you sneaked out. The date of the promotion ceremony has been notified to all sects. It cannot be changed anymore. Now you can only enter the array. Sai, we have no choice. Who asked you to be disobedient first? We didn't want to be so cruel. Yes, take this as a lesson for you. Next time don't sneak out of the sect. As they spoke, they directly pushed the numb Fatty into the blood array. Then they activated the wind blades, leaving deep wounds on his body that revealed his bones. For a moment there was dead silence. Do you need more evidence? Lone Moon asked in return. These images were recorded after he saved Fatty using the Divine Race's backtracking technique. For this, he specially went back to Divine Imperial Sect secretly. He expected that they would definitely be useful in the future. There had to be surveillance footage or something. It was just that this spell had a time limit, so he could only see a little, but it was enough. Sun Yu and the others didn't dare to say another word to defend themselves. Their faces were even paler, as if they had already foreseen how Divine Imperial Sect would be condemned after this incident. Amit Ba. Chan-ji also sighed, his gaze towards Sun Yu was full of disapproval, his voice also deepened. Fellow Taoist son, Divine Imperial Sect uses human flesh and blood to sacrifice to the array to raise their cultivation. Such a vicious act is no different from that of an evil demon. You people are not worthy of being called immortal cultivators. Benefactor Hui Zhe heavily injured all of you today. It can be said that it is fate. It is all because of the bad karma that you have created. Sun Yu was even more afraid to make a sound. Chan-ji also continued, as the Lord of Haoran Court, I will definitely not condone your evil acts. From today onwards, within 3 months, Benefactor Sun, please go back and order the entire sect to abolish the cultivation that was raised through human flesh and blood, no matter if it is soul formation or traveling immortal cultivators. And within 300 years, the disciples of the sect are not allowed to leave the sect. This is to return justice to fellow Taoist Hui Zhe. Court Lord. Sun Yu was shocked as if he wanted to refute. But if anyone has the slightest hesitation. Chan-ji did not wait for him to finish and continued, my Haoran Court will go to Divine Imperial Sect and personally execute it on your behalf. Sun Yu lowered his head, but didn't dare to argue anymore. Even the other people of Divine Imperial Sect all lowered their heads. But when the other sects heard this, a hint of joy flashed across their eyes. Divine Imperial Sect was known as the #1 immortal sect of the sacred Arrival Realm. Naturally it had the most disciples. Not allowing disciples to leave for 300 years, that meant that the other sects had 300 more years to develop. Who knows who would be #1 by then. Everyone, please sincerely repent and reflect on your mistakes. Chanji put his palms together and called out the name of Buddha again. Lone Moon looked at this monk in confusion. He really didn't think that this monk who rushed out to say that he wanted to uphold justice really had some tricks up his sleeve. These cultivators actually really listened to him. They didn't even have the intention to fight back. Could it be that this so-called Haoran court was really so prestigious? It was practically like the law enforcement agency of the immortal cultivation world, the relevant departments? Fellow Taoist Huizhe. Chanji turned to look at Fatty behind him, revealing a kind smile. Fellow Taoist's body is special. I have cultivated for many years and traveled the world, but I have never seen such a special case, but I think this is not a good thing. Although fellow Taoist has already found justice, your days in the future will not be too peaceful. His meaning was very clear. As long as Fatty's body was not resolved, there would be people who coveted his flesh and blood. After all, flesh and blood that could directly raise one's cultivation, it was hard not to covet it. Fatty naturally knew this as well. His expression darkened. Fellow Taoist, if you don't mind? Chanji continued to suggest, you can follow me back to Haoran Court to stay temporarily. My sect is full of Buddhist cultivators. The last thing we can't stand is the smell of blood. To fellow Taoist, this must be the most suitable place? Once the storm has passed, you can come and go on your own. What do you think, fellow Taoist? Haoran Court. Lone Moon frowned. He subconsciously opened his mouth and said, where will Fatty go with you? All right. Before he could finish, Shining suddenly appeared out of nowhere, directly agreeing to the monk's request. Chanji was stunned. He looked at Shining, who suddenly appeared, subconsciously looked around. Where did this girl come from? He actually did not notice. Shining, what are you doing? Lone Moon glared at her disapprovingly. Father Nyo, eating small animals all day will get boring. It's time for a change. Get lost. When have you ever been so diligent? Shining had already turned to look at the monk. I say, Master Deng, can I bring family and burdens to your house? She pointed at Father Nyo, then at herself and Chef. His surname wasn't Deng? Chanji was stunned, then regained his senses. He put his palms together and said, since they are friends of fellow Taoist Huizhe, of course they can. Oh, then let's go. Shining waved at Chef. Chef, quickly pack your things and let's go. Yes, Master, no problem, Master. I Ching looked around, remembering that he did not seem to have much to pack, so he casually picked up Fatty, who was meditating. Fatty. Rabbit. Chapter 485. The war between the two realms ended just like that, with Fatty taking on a whole bunch of enemies. Shin-Ing, Fatty, and the rest stayed in the southern land for 2 days before they officially decided to leave for Haoran Court. Rabbit was crying his eyes out. He held onto Fatty's hand reluctantly. Brother Fatty, you have to come back and see me. He even stuffed a few bags of carrots into Lone Moon's hands. Eat when you're hungry. Remember to come back and look for me when you're done. Oh yes, don't let great immortals see you. Don't worry, Brother Rabbit. You're my best friend. I'll come back to see you when I'm free. Fatty looked reluctant as well. He quickly kept the carrots and patted his chest. No problem. Lone Moon, who had seen the whole thing, why don't the two of you just get together? It's getting late. Fellow Taoists, let's go. Chanji looked at the sky and reminded them. Lone Moon nodded. Thinking of Fatty's weight, he did not choose to fly on his sword. Instead, he took out something and threw it out. Instantly, it turned into a huge spirit boat. It was snow white and emanated spirit chi. Under the sunlight, it shone with a colorful light. The deck of the boat was even more exquisite. It was obviously the product of burning spirit stones. Chanji silently stuffed the lotus seat that he had taken out halfway back into his pocket. Let's go. Lone Moon led the group onto the boat. He turned back to Chanji and said, Court Lord Chanji, please lead the way. Of course. Chanji nodded. He walked forward and gave Lone Moon the general direction of Haoran Court. Lone Moon set the direction of the immortal boat and took the opportunity to chat with Chanji. He also asked him about the basic situation of Haoran Court. Coincidentally, Haoran Court was on the uncrouped sea, east of the southern land. It was much faster to go there from the southern land than from the outside. The uncrouped sea was filled with astral winds all year round. It was also a place full of yin qi. That was why cultivators usually did not enter the uncrouped sea. But Hao Ran Court was a Buddhist sect. Buddhist cultivation techniques were especially effective against yin and evil things. That was why they were the only sect on the uncrouped sea. They lived far away from the world. It was also because Buddhist cultivators cultivated with merit that their disciples were all highly skilled in Buddhist Dharma. Although their combat ability was not as good as sword cultivators, their merit was different from ordinary cultivators' techniques. The heavenly Tao was extremely stingy with merit. Even if they accumulated it for many lifetimes, they might not be able to accumulate much. One could tell just by looking at Yun Heng previously. He had saved the world several times in a row and saved thousands of living beings. That was why he had so much merit. Moreover, after Song Ren was reborn, they were all taken away. It was obvious how difficult it was to cultivate merit. However, merit was very beneficial. The heavenly Tao would be biased towards people with merit, specifically in terms of luck. Moreover, merit could prevent evil from invading, and in the later stages, it was even possible to cultivate the golden body. There was another hidden benefit. If he did a good deed and was sincerely thanked by others, he would gain merit. In other words, it was like giving the person a good person stamp. If someone attacked someone with merit, they would be stained with bad karma, which was not beneficial to their cultivation. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a devil cultivator or an immortal cultivator, they would not easily provoke a Buddhist cultivator. However, from what Chanji said, Hao Ran Court was different from ordinary Buddhists. They were more nosy. Different from other Buddhist cultivators who did not care about worldly affairs or went deep into the mortal realm to cultivate merit, they even meddled in the affairs of the immortal cultivation world. If there was any injustice, they would intervene. Although they were Buddhist cultivators, the disciples in their sect were not weak. In fact, they had the most soul formation cultivators among all the sections. It was said that they had a patriarch in charge, a perfected immortal who had already cultivated the golden body. However, for the sake of the sect, they had not ascended to the immortal world. It could be considered a very unique sect. In the past, there were people who did not believe in heresy who challenged them. However, after a few times, no other sect dared to challenge them directly. Moreover, they were indeed fair. As time passed, they became the recognized arbitration organization in the entire sacred arrival realm. Hao Ran Court was not originally called Hao Ran Court, but Buddha Heart Sect. However, because they were too nosy, everyone looked for them to uphold justice. Therefore, they changed their name to Hao Ran Court, which meant righteousness. From the looks of it, it was normal for them to stand up for Fatty and go against Divine Imperial Sect. However, Aloneman's expression darkened. Whether it really was righteousness, it seemed like he could only find out when he went there. Master. Inside the ship, Chef spoke hesitantly, but his hands did not stop moving as he placed the pastries on the table. Shining turned to look at him. Chef turned to look outside at Father Nyo and Chanji who were chatting. That person is it? Shining nodded. Chef's frown deepened. A moment later, as if thinking of something, he sat down at the side after placing the pastries. With a serious expression, he said, Master, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. Shining grabbed a piece of pastry and stuffed it into her mouth. What is it? Ever since Master woke up from hibernation. He paused and shook his head. No, I should say after Senior Shin, after Big Sister defeated that invading manager, my powers seem to have changed. I don't know if it's an illusion, but I keep feeling like, you didn't feel wrong. Shining continued. You did. What? Chef jumped to his feet in shock. Shining thought for a moment, then continued, this matter is more complicated. I should say that this was the original plan of this plane. Now it's just going back to normal. Then Kai Tian and the others? That's why my sister said they were messing around blindly. If that's the case, what about you, Master? What will you do? As if thinking of something, his face paled. He grabbed the person in front of him and looked her up and down. Will you become like before because of me? Shining dropped the pastry in her hand after being pulled by him. What a waste. Master. Seeing that she did not respond, I Ching became even more anxious. Don't worry. Shining waved her hand. I'm fine. Nothing will happen to me in the future. But, even if you're different, you're still my assistant. That won't change, right? Do you understand? He did not understand. In other words, you'll have to work for me for the rest of your life. Shining tilted her head and thought about it. As for the specific reason, I'll have to look at it again to be clear. But your change will not affect me at all. You won't go into hibernation again. I Ching looked at her seriously for a while. After confirming that what she said was true, he heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. Should I tell Father Nyo about this in advance? That's good too, there's no need for that. She immediately shook her head. Now is not the time to talk about it. What's more, there's still a big matter to settle. She seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes narrowed. It hadn't started yet. If Father Nyo wanted to blow up, he could blow up later. Anyway, he should be used to it by now. A0. Chapter 486. Yes, master, no problem, master. Chef nodded obediently, pretending that he didn't know anything. He turned to look outside at a certain someone who was still chatting happily with Chanji. Then he glanced at Shining, who was right in front of him. For some reason he blushed. All of a sudden, he pulled her over and with lightning speed, lowered his head and kissed her on the lips, leaving her in a split second. Then his face turned as red as an exploding tomato. He subconsciously licked his lips. It tasted like osmanthus cake. Master is so sweet indeed. Shining? Can't you be more serious when kissing? Do you think we're playing house? Master, I'm going to cook first. Before she could finish, Chef held his flushed face and turned to run for his life. Because he was in such a hurry, he even tripped over the doorsill. His leg turned and he directly knocked Fatty, who was coming towards him, to the ground. In the next moment he immediately got up and turned to leave. Lady Shen, fellow Taoist chef. Fatty, who almost had a nosebleed, sat on the ground, clutching his nose in confusion. Shining sighed. He had meat to eat, but he insisted on drinking broth. Is he stupid? Ah? Fatty was even more confused. Why did Miss Shen suddenly become so unfathomable? Lone Moon and the others flew for 3 whole days before they passed through the southern land and arrived at the uncrouped sea. Chanji was right. There were strong winds and Yin-Chi all over the sea. Ordinary Dharma artifacts would not be able to pass through. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon. He took out his own lotus seat and was just about to remind everyone of the dangers of the sea. Lone Moon, however, steered the spirit boat into the sea. The moment they entered the uncrouped sea, a transparent protective array rose up around the spirit boat, enveloping the entire immortal boat and blocking the strong winds and Yin-Chi outside. Not even a slight breeze could enter the boat. What did you say? Lone Moon turned to look at Chanji. No. Nothing. Chanji silently stuffed his lotus seat back into the lotus seat. He suddenly felt embarrassed for the second time. The spirit boat sailed on the uncrouped sea for another 2 days before they arrived at Haoran Court. From afar, a golden light flashed across the horizon. The originally dark and gloomy uncrouped sea seemed to have been split apart by something. A majestic mountain floated on the surface of the sea. On top of it, there were countless golden palaces that emitted a faint golden light. It was as if a bright lamp had been lit in the middle of the sea. It was exceptionally eye-catching. As they got closer, they realized that it wasn't that the palaces were originally golden, but that they were surrounded by a faint layer of Buddhist light, which made them golden. Fellow Taoists, we've arrived. Chanji said with a friendly smile. Lone Moon then controlled the spirit boat to fly in and stop in the square of a huge hall. As soon as he got off the boat, he heard a faint Buddhist voice coming from the hall. Compared to the extravagance of the other sect masters, Chanji was much more low-key. Even on the square, there were only 2 Buddhist cultivators who came to welcome them. Chanji stepped forward to speak to the 2 disciples. A moment later, he turned back to look at Lone Moon anxiously and said, "Something has happened in the sect. I have to rush over to deal with it. Fellow Taoists, you must have had a long journey. Why don't you rest in the guest rooms first? I will go over later and show you around Haoran Court. What do you think?" "Since it's urgent, Court Lord, please go ahead. There's no need to mind us." Lone Moon nodded politely. Chanji then instructed the 2 disciples beside him to lead them to the guest rooms. Lone Moon looked at the 2 Buddhist cultivators in front of him. He realized that their cultivation levels weren't very high. They looked like they had just reached the golden core stage. Judging by their bone age, they didn't seem very old either. However, there was already a faint layer of golden light surrounding their bodies. However, to be able to train by the Court Lord's side, they must be quite talented. "Fellow Taoists, are you 2 disciples of Court Lord Chanji?" Lone Moon asked casually. The 2 of them paused and turned to look at him. Then they answered respectfully, "Supremacy, we are just ordinary disciples guarding the mountain in Haoran Court. We are not the Court Lord's disciples." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. I see that the two of you are quite talented, but you are just ordinary disciples. Haoran Court is indeed an impressive place. Even the disciples under your sect are so outstanding. Supremacy, you flatter us. The disciple bowed politely. Although he spoke modestly, his eyes unconsciously became a little warmer, and there was even a little bit of glory in them, as if this kind of praise was only natural. Esteemed guests, we have arrived at the guest rooms. The two of them stopped outside a quiet courtyard. The Buddhist cultivator on the left took out a restriction token and hung it outside the courtyard door. Instantly there was a flash of light. The courtyard door opened automatically, revealing a small building inside. Esteemed guests, please enter. We will not disturb your rest any further. Thank you for leading the way. This is my duty. The two of them bowed again before turning around and leaving. Lone Moon and the others walked in and found that the inside was even bigger than it looked from the outside. In front of them was a very big courtyard. In the middle of it was a small lotus pond. Beside the lotus pond, there were green trees and a small pavilion. Opposite them was a 3-story wooden building. It looked very elegant. The moment they entered, they felt the thick spirit chi rushing towards them. No wonder there was a restriction outside. The spirit chi in this small courtyard was comparable to that of ordinary cultivation cave abodes. It looks like we will have to stay here for a while. Lone Moon turned to look at them. There are quite a lot of rooms here. The first floor is for chef to cook. We will stay on the second floor. Shining, you can find a room on the third floor. What? She did not want to climb the third floor. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Look at your bad temper. If we don't stay away from you, you will tear the building down. If you don't stay on the top floor, who will? AI, so troublesome. Why must there be a third floor? Shut up. He glared at her. After thinking for a while, he added, at most, I will set up a transportation array for you on the first floor. He should have said so earlier if there was an elevator. Let's go and tidy up first. Lone Moon then walked towards the small building. Chef also took out his kitchen utensils and prepared to change the kitchen. He had just taken a few steps when he realized that Shining was standing in the same spot. What are you doing? Father Nyo, what is that? She suddenly pointed to the pond in the courtyard. Lone Moon took a look and answered, a lotus. But it should be a spirit lotus for it to grow in such a place. Oh, Shining replied. This pond doesn't seem as clean as the river where the rabbit lives. Nonsense. The southern land is a spirit river. What's more, there are things planted in this pond. The pond water is naturally not as clear as the river water, Lone Moon replied casually. Seeing that she still did not want to move, he could only drag her all the way up. The transportation array can only be set up later. This time you climb up for me. Chapter 487. It had to be said that Haoran Court's guest rooms were of high standard. Not only was it a place to receive guests, but all the utensils inside were very exquisite. What's more, he actually found some fasting pills, spirit-returning pills and other common elixirs in the room. Lone Moon glanced at the elixirs, then turned to I Ching. Chef, what do you think of this Haoran Court? Did that Chanji really want to help Fatty, or did he have other motives? I Ching frowned and poured a cup of tea for Shining, who was sprawled on the table. Don't trust him completely. No. Fatty retorted subconsciously, without a hint of suspicion. Isn't Haoran Court the fairest place? And Master Chanji blocked the immortal artifact for me just now. He doesn't look like a bad person. Master, I think they don't. Fatty's voice became softer and softer under Lone Moon's gaze. Finally he shrank into a ball, feeling wronged. Someone so stupid that he was sold by Divine Imperial Sect for decades. With your intellect and judgment, what right do you have to speak? His heart hurt. He missed Brother Rabbit. Lone Moon ignored him and turned to continue speaking to Chef. I think this Chanji's timing is too coincidental. He didn't come earlier or later. He just had to come when Fatty was beating up Divine Imperial Sect. Although on the surface he was indeed on Fatty's side, and Divine Imperial Sect also paid a price. But he still felt that something was strange about this. If he has other motives, what are they? I Ching asked. This was something that Lone Moon could not figure out. The only thing that people coveted about Fatty was his special physique. Buddhist cultivators cultivated merit and could not kill. They could not be tainted by the smell of blood. They were indeed the only people who would not have evil intentions towards Fatty, especially when Fatty's identity was completely exposed. No matter how he looked at it, Haoran Court's action seemed to be an act of justice. It was frank and without a trace of selfishness. But it was precisely because of this that he became even more suspicious. Suddenly thinking of something, Lone Moon turned to look at a certain person sprawled on the table. Shining, why did you agree to let Fatty come here in the first place? Speaking of which, she was the one who agreed to let Fatty come to Haoran Court. Although after the secret of Fatty's physique was exposed, it was indeed not suitable for them to stay in the southern land for long. After all, demons preferred Tripitaka's meat. Huh. Shining tilted her head and answered, because of that light bulb. Before she could finish speaking, a familiar voice suddenly came from outside. Fellow Taoists, have you rested well? The few of them exchanged glances and walked out. Only then did they see Chanji waiting outside the courtyard. Court Lord Chanji, you came so quickly. Lone Moon greeted him. Have you settled the important matters in the sect? He seemed to have thought of something and frowned. It's just some daily matters. It's just that I was in a hurry, so I went over to take a look. I hope everyone doesn't mind. What are you talking about, Hall Master? I'm already very grateful for your hospitality. You're too kind, fellow Taoist. Chanji smiled even more warmly. After another round of exchanging pleasantries with Lone Moon, Chanji suggested that he bring them around the sect to familiarize themselves with the place. Lone Moon naturally would not reject this opportunity to openly explore Haoran Court. Hence he followed Chanji out the door. Chanji did not seem to have any reservations either. He led the group from the guest rooms in the side hall. They first went to the main hall for a stroll, then brought them to the side halls on the left and right as well as dozens of halls of various sizes. Along the way they met many disciples. Some had high cultivation levels, but there were indeed many high-level cultivators. Compared to Divine Imperial Sect there were many more. What's more, they were all like Chanji, amiable and friendly. Lone Moon did not know if it was because they were Buddhist cultivators, but they did not have the arrogance that other cultivators had. What's more, they all had Buddha's aura around them. The more Lone Moon looked at them, the more uncomfortable he felt. Yet he could not put his finger on what was wrong. If he had to put his finger on it, he would say that the entire sect's atmosphere was overly harmonious. There was no sense of impatience at all. This is our sect's pill refinement room. Chanji pointed to a small hall in front of them. You guys refine pills too? Lone Moon asked subconsciously. Chanji smiled and said, Haoran Court is far away from the mortal world. It is not as convenient to go out to sea as other immortal sections. To avoid trouble, the disciples of our sect refine some regular pills themselves. Although they are not as good as other pill refinement sects, because Haoran Court is bathed in Buddha's aura all year round, the ordinary pills that they refine are surprisingly more effective than ordinary pills. Oh, there's such a thing? Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. Indeed. Chanji nodded. Then, as if recalling something, he turned to Fatty and said, Oh yes, fellow Taoist Huizhe, you were seriously injured in the battle with Divine Imperial Sect. I wonder if you have recovered. If you don't mind, there are spirit recovery pills in the guest rooms. They can help alleviate your injuries. Thank you, Court Lord. Fatty hurriedly bowed and said, When we were in the southern land, Master helped me heal my injuries. I have recovered now. He even refined 100 flying swords to repay his debt. That's good. Chanji heaved a sigh of relief. Then he brought them into the pill room to look around. Indeed, as he said, there were only some commonly used spirit herbs in the pill room. They really only refined some commonly used pills. After exiting the pill room, he led them around the remaining halls. They were all very ordinary places, and there weren't even a few disciples around. Only then did he bring them to the back of the mountain. As they walked, he introduced, the back of the mountain is where the sect cultivates spirit herbs. It is also a place where the disciples meditate and cultivate. It is still early now. It is the time when there are many people. Just as he finished speaking, the few of them passed through a field of low-level spirit herbs. Suddenly, a huge pond appeared in front of them. At first, it looked to be about 100 meters wide. There were many lotus flowers in the pond. Red petals filled the entire pond. A faint golden light enveloped the lotus pond. I Ching, who was carrying his master, stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened and he subconsciously turned around. Master, this place, Shining adjusted her position. She moved her head from Chef's left shoulder to his right. I smelled it from afar. I Ching's expression immediately darkened. The three people in front did not notice the people behind them. Lone Moon and Chanji walked forward and realized that there was an empty space beside the lotus pond. There were hundreds of disciples sitting cross-legged on it. All of them were in a meditative state. Their bodies were also surrounded by the same Buddhist light as the one around the lotus pond. This lotus pond has been here since the founding of our sect. I heard that it was personally built by the founder of our sect. It is said that it has been here for millions of years. As if he knew what they were thinking, Chanji smiled and explained, back then the founder achieved his Tao and ascended to immortality here. That is why every generation of disciples in our sect sees this place as a holy land. They meditate here every day. Perhaps because of this, over time, the lotus pond has also gained some Buddhist qualities. I see. No wonder there was Buddhist light above the pond. Chapter 488. Chanji led the few of them around the meditating disciples and walked to the side of the pond. He plucked off a lotus seed and handed it to Lone Moon. The lotus seeds in this pond are bathed in Buddhist light every day. They have already turned into spirit plants. We only get one lotus every 100 years. Not only can they be made into Dharma artifacts, but the lotus seeds also have the miraculous effect of calming one's mind. Fellow Taoist, why don't you give it a try? Lone Moon received it curiously. Indeed, a thick wave of spirit chi surged towards him. It did not even lose out to top-grade spirit herbs. There was even a faint pleasant fragrance. Habitually, he turned around and was about to hand it to a certain foodie. Foodieing you? No. Xin Ying rejected immediately, a look of disgust on her face. I hate vegetarian food. Forget it if you don't want to eat it. Little ingrate, do you think I want to give it to you? Lone Moon glared at her and started to pick up the lotus seed. Xin Ying glanced at the lotus in his hand and narrowed her eyes. Suddenly she said, Chef. Yes, master. Where do the lotus pods grow? Naturally, it grew out of the lotus. Lotus? Is it the same as the dandelion in the radish? Yes, master. Dandelions also have seeds. Oh, Lone Moon, who was about to eat, a certain image that was not a river crab flashed across his mind like a bolt of lightning. F***ck, I suddenly don't feel like eating at all. I even feel like vomiting. What's going on? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched as if he had been scalded. He turned around and shoved the lotus seed back into Chanji's hands. Court Lord, this item is very precious. I think it's best that we don't waste it. Then he looked up at the sky and said, Thank you for today, Court Lord. It's getting late, so I won't trouble you any further. We should return to the guest room. After saying that, he turned around and left. As he walked, he swung his right hand that he had just used to break off the lotus seed. He even made several dirt removal spells in a row, as if he was stained with something dirty and couldn't wash it clean no matter how hard he tried. Chanji, Fatty, what happened just now? The four of them stayed in Hao Ran Court for a month. Other than Chanji, who would occasionally come to greet him, no one else came to disturb him. Even if he occasionally went out for a stroll, the people he met were extremely polite. Moreover, they could come and go as they pleased, and there was nothing suspicious about them. The entire sect was just like its name, righteous and incomparably calm. Even Lone Moon began to wonder if he was thinking too much. Last time, Chanji said that he wanted those scum from Divine Imperial Sect to cripple their own cultivation within 3 months. Lone Moon decided to stay in the Hao Ran sect for 3 months and see how things turned out. In any case, Fatty's debt had not been repaid. In these 3 months, they could keep an eye on Fatty's weapon refinement, talisman crafting and so on. Although the spiritual weapons in the lower realm were not worth much, if he ascended in the future he could still return them. However, for some reason Fatty's cultivation seemed to be stuck at the late stage of the soul formation stage, even though he had already resolved the knot in his heart. Everything else was normal, but no matter how he tried to circulate his spiritual energy, he was unable to break through. He even suspected that Fatty's cheat had lost its effect. Otherwise, why would it suddenly get stuck? On the other hand, the fat man was not anxious about this at all. In fact, he felt that this was normal and he said righteously, Master is so amazing, but you still haven't ascended, right? It seems that I still have a long way to go. How do you know that I can't ascend? If he wanted to go to the immortal realm, he could do it anytime. Isn't that so? Fatty faltered. Isn't Master unable to ascend because he can't abstain from eating? Who can't abstain from eating? You're the one who can't abstain from eating, your whole family can't abstain from eating. Double the training for today. No, Master. Get lost. Who's your master? Perhaps it's because of the realm gate. I Ching looked up at the sky and said in a low voice, the seal on the realm gate has not been lifted. Based on Fatty's strength, even if his cultivation increases, he will not be able to ascend. You mean? Lone Moon's expression darkened. Before the nomological power recovers, Fatty can't ascend? Yes. I Ching nodded. Shit. Lone Moon frowned. Then how long were they going to stay in this small world? Perhaps. I Ching turned to look at the lotus pond outside and said, "It will be resolved very soon." What? Lone Moon faltered and was about to ask. All of a sudden the ground began to tremble and a huge boom rang out. The righteous noble sect seemed to be under attack, and its grand spell formation activated. Golden light spread out to cover the entire sect, and even the restrictive spells in the courtyard were dispelled. What's going on? Lone Moon stood up. The shaking did not stop. In fact, it seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. The usually quiet sect started to make noises. There was also a faint cold aura coming from the ground. On closer inspection, it seemed to come from the bottom of the sea under the mountain. The two of them walked out. Fatty also sensed that something was wrong. He released his divine perception to take a look. Indeed, the disciples were flying out of the sect in a panic. Most of them were flying towards the sea under the mountain. "There's something at the bottom of the mountain," I Ching said with certainty. Lone Moon frowned. Just as he was about to ask for more details, a disciple rushed over and bowed to them. "Seniors, the court master has ordered that something big has happened in the sect. It is not convenient for you to stay any longer. Please follow me down the mountain and leave the uncrooked sea." What exactly happened? Lone Moon frowned. Why did Chanji suddenly ask them to leave? The disciple looked troubled. "I am only following the orders of the sect master to bring you down the mountain. I'm not sure about anything else. Now that the protective mountain array has been activated, we can only go down the mountain through the array at the back. Time is of the essence. It will be too late if we are late. Please follow me quickly, seniors." Lone Moon exchanged a look with Chef. "Does it have anything to do with the thing at the bottom of the mountain?" "Senior." The disciple's face paled. He looked even more panicked. I don't know either." "It's all right. Bring us directly to your court master," Lone Moon said in a low voice. Lone Moon said in a low voice, "Given the situation now, something big must have happened. Maybe we can help." The disciple looked up at him. He hesitated for a moment before nodding. "All right. Everyone please follow me." Lone Moon was about to follow on his sword when he suddenly paused. "Wait, where's Shining? Bring her along. Otherwise he would lose another one." I Ching nodded. He returned to the house and pulled Shining, who was still chewing on a fruit. Together with Fatty, they flew out with the disciple. Indeed, Chanji was right at the bottom of Haoran Court. He was standing on the surface of the sea. Beside him were tens of soul formation cultivators. One of them had immortal chi about him. Upon closer inspection, Lone Moon realized that he was already an earth immortal. He was just suppressing his cultivation. Chapter 489. They seemed to be working together to maintain an array formation. It was a very complicated multi-layered array formation. Lone Moon looked at it for a long time before he recognized that it was a large-scale seal. However, the array formation was not very strong, and it seemed to be on the verge of breaking. There was also a trace of cold aura that was constantly seeping out of it. They were working together to suppress the array formation, as if to prevent the thing inside from escaping. However, it was obvious that they were not strong enough. The cold aura seeped out of the array formation more and more. The thing inside was hitting the array formation again and again. Every time it hit, the entire Haoran sect shook. Lone Moon frowned and turned to the person beside him. "Fatty, go and help them." "Yes, master." Fatty immediately rushed over, as if he could not wait any longer. He was good at array formations. Naturally, he knew where to start. He found a direction and conjured a seal to set up the array. He channeled his spirit energy into the array and worked with the others to complete it. "Why are you?" Chanji looked surprised. He glanced at Fatty, then turned to look at Lone Moon and the other two. "Focus on setting up the array," Lone Moon reminded him. "The array formation is not complete yet." Chanji finally reacted. He hurriedly turned to look at the array formation. With Fatty's help, the pressure on everyone lessened. The cold aura seeping out of the array formation also gradually disappeared. In less than half an hour, the clashing of the array formation slowly stopped. The sea also became calm again. The light of the array formation slowly dimmed. "Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist." Chanji nodded at Fatty, then looked at Lone Moon and the others. "It was nothing. Don't stand on ceremony, Court Lord." Fatty smiled and replied, "May I ask, Court Lord, what is sealed in this array formation?" Lone Moon looked at the location of the seal and asked, "Everyone here is a soul formation cultivator. Why does it require all of you to work together to barely seal it?" This. Chanji's expression changed. He seemed to be hesitating. "It's a ferocious beast." An old man behind him answered. "It was the Earth Immortal. Patriarch, there's no harm in telling them." The old man waved his hand and stopped Chanji from objecting. "These few don't look like evil people. Perhaps they might be able to help us if we tell them." "Fellow Taoist you are?" Lone Moon glanced at the elder. An Earth Immortal could actually stay in the lower realm for such a long time without ascending. Furthermore, he was not an itinerant immortal who had disintegrated. This was indeed rare. "This is the ancestor of my sect, Exalted Immortal Jingda," Chanji introduced. "So it's fellow Taoist Jingda." Lone Moon cupped his fists politely and replied subconsciously. However, the expressions of the other cultivators present changed. Jingda's status in the sacred arrival realm was different from that of the other cultivators. It was not wrong to say that he was the #1 cultivator in the cultivation world. Perhaps because he was a perfected immortal, everyone addressed him as Exalted Immortal. Lone Moon blurted out, "Fellow Taoist." Even Jingda could not help but frown, but he did not deliberately correct him. Trapped beneath this seal is the ferocious beast Draconic Weep. "What's up?" Lone Moon was really shocked and his eyes widened. "What?" Shining turned to look at Chef out of habit. I Ching lowered his head and explained, "Master, the Weeping Sorcerer is an ancient ferocious beast. It appeared in this plane at the same time as the dragons and phoenixes. Its power is not inferior to the divine race. But ferocious beasts are different from the divine race. Ferocious beasts do not have sentience and they are born to kill. In the ancient times, the divine race fought with the ferocious beasts and killed all the ferocious beasts. Logically speaking, there should be no more ancient ferocious beasts in this world. Then what is this weeping beast?" "It's a weeping sorcerer." I Ching thought for a moment before continuing. "Legend has it that the ancient ferocious beast weeping sorcerer uses Yin Qi as its soul, blood Qi as its spirit and turbid grievous Qi as its bones. It has a violent temperament and only knows how to kill. What's more, it likes to eat flesh and blood. As long as it is alive it will eat it." "I see." Xinying's eyes narrowed. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Why would an ancient ferocious beast appear in the mortal world? Even if it appeared, it should have appeared in the divine world, right? After all, it was at the same time. "I'm not very sure about that either." Chanji sighed and said, "Years ago, when the ancestral master of my sect discovered this weeping sorcerer, he sealed it here and established the Buddha Heart sect, which is now the Haoran court. He wanted to use the Buddha light in the sect to purify this ferocious beast's Yin Qi." He seemed to have thought of something and shook his head. "Unfortunately, after so many years, this ferocious beast has not been dealt with. In fact, it has become even more ferocious. Now, even the seal that the ancestral master left behind can no longer suppress it. Just sealing it here is not the solution? Once the ancient ferocious beast appeared, no mortal cultivator would be able to stop it no matter how many of them there were. No, it should be said that even in the immortal world, it would not be easy to subdue it. Sai, how would we not know that the seal is only temporarily keeping it here so that it cannot go out and harm people?" Chanji looked helpless. He raised his head to look at Lone Moon and something flashed across his eyes. Then it quickly disappeared. "But apart from this, there is no other way." Lone Moon frowned. Of course there were other ways, but the most effective way was for him or Chef to deal with it directly. Dealing with this ferocious beast was not a problem. The problem was where this ferocious beast came from. Why would a creature that was already extinct in the divine world appear here? It's just that the power of the seal is getting weaker and weaker, while the ferocious beast is getting stronger and stronger. What's more, this is already the third time in recent times. It wants to break through the seal. It looks like the seal will be completely broken soon unless... Chanji seemed to have thought of something and immediately shook his head, his expression troubled. A moment later, he turned to the few of them and said, "Fellow Taoists, at the end of the day, this is a matter for the Haoran court. It has nothing to do with you. It's no longer safe here. Everyone, please leave as soon as possible." Lone Moon's expression darkened. Before he could speak, Fatty beside him spoke up in a righteous tone, "Now is such a critical time, how can we stay out of this? If we really let the ancient ferocious beast out, all living beings will be killed. No one will be able to escape. What's more, we are not cowards who are afraid of death. Isn't that right, Master?" Once he finished speaking, he looked at Lone Moon with a righteous expression. Lone Moon rolled his eyes at him. Then you go and deal with the ferocious beast. You're talking as if you can do it? Fatty immediately lowered his head timidly. Lone Moon could not be bothered with this hot-blooded young man. He turned to Chanji and said, Court Lord, what you're saying is that there are other ways to stop the ferocious beast from coming out? There were ways in the past, but... Chanji looked at him, the light in his eyes flickering. He looked like he wanted to say something but was hesitating. A moment later, he gritted his teeth and said, The array that seals the ferocious beast was created by the founding master of our sect. The method of setting up the array has been passed down from generation to generation. Naturally, we've learned all of it. Now that the ferocious beast has broken the seal, the most effective way is to reseal it. How do we reseal it? Lone Moon asked. Chapter 490. This seal requires 24 cultivators who are at least at the soul formation stage to set up different arrays at the same time. Our sect originally had 24 soul formation cultivators, but Chanji pointed at the cultivators around him and continued, A few months ago one of our cultivators died, causing a gap in the array. Although Patriarch Jingde can patch it up, there will be a gap when the new seal replaces the old one. If no one is guarding the place now, we will not be able to defend the array. If no one is guarding it, the beast will take the opportunity to escape. That's why we don't dare to reseal it. So, Lone Moon's expression darkened. You want us to guard you when you reseal it? I know that's a little too much, Chanji sighed. Chanji sighed and said, The ancient beast is really too dangerous. Although it's only for a moment, it's hard to avoid other problems. That's why it's always been our sect's elder who personally guards the array. So everyone please leave quickly. If it's just guarding the array, we're willing to try. Fatty quickly stepped forward and said, Court Master, we can't delay the sealing of the beast. Leave it to us. Chanji was still hesitant. Guarding the array is very important. Fellow Taoist Huizhe alone, I'm afraid. Fatty could only look at Lone Moon for help. Master. Chanji also turned to look at Lone Moon inquiringly. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. After a while, he sighed and replied, Including me and Chef, the three of us should be enough. Since Fatty had already agreed, Lone Moon could not reject. Then let's do it. Only then did Chanji look relieved. He cupped his fists and bowed solemnly to the few of them. This is for the sake of the world. Chanji thanks everyone. The cultivators behind him also looked delighted. Their eyes lit up as they looked at the few of them. There's no time to lose. Let's start now. With that said, the few of them lined up and returned to their original positions. Chanji pointed to the middle of the group and said, Everyone please guard the eye of the array. Be careful not to let the yin chi inside leak out. Fatty nodded and walked towards the center of the array. Lone Moon and Yi Ching exchanged a look before pulling Shen Ying over to stand with them. At Chanji's command, the Earth Immortal and the Soul Formation cultivators activated the array. Instantly, many different types of arrays appeared above their heads, layer by layer. In less than a moment, the huge array reappeared beneath their feet. The sea below them began to surge unstably, as if something was about to jump out of the array. Fatty's expression became even more nervous as he hurriedly summoned his spirit sword and cast a spell. He kept a close eye on his feet so that he could discover the yin chi of the ferocious beast at the first instance and stop it in time. He was highly focused and his heart was in suspense, afraid that he would miss something. However, when he unintentionally turned to look, he discovered that the three people beside him were standing leisurely, as if this matter had nothing to do with them. They did not even lower their heads to look at the formation. Not to mention the person who was focused on munching on the fruit. Fatty stared blankly for a moment, a dumbfounded look on his face. Master? Weren't they supposed to guard the array together? Why did it seem like he was the only one who was nervous? What's the rush? Lone Moon gave him a look as if he was looking at an idiot. Although the actors are in place, the show hasn't started yet. What did he mean? Before Fatty could react, the new seal above them had already been completed, forming an array that was exactly the same as the one beneath their feet. It was slowly descending, about to replace the seal below them. Suddenly, he heard a crisp cracking sound as if something had been opened. He saw that in the middle of the two overlapping arrays, a huge black hole had opened up. It was right in the middle of the array, right beneath their feet. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with yin chi, filling up the entire array. The seal had been opened. Not good. Fatty's heart jumped. He turned and shouted in Chanji's direction, Court Lord, the ferocious beast is about to before he could finish speaking, he saw Chanji suddenly smile at him. It was no different from before, but for some reason, it was filled with malice. Fatty felt a chill run down his spine, and a chill ran down his spine. Only then did he realize what was going on. In the next moment, the ground beneath their feet sank and their vision turned black. The few of them instantly fell into another world, and the array above them disappeared. Their surroundings fell silent. Only the familiar sound of someone chewing on a fruit could be heard. Lone Moon conjured a fire elemental spell to light up the surroundings. But it was only limited to the few of them. Everywhere else was still pitch black. Master. Fatty was still in a daze. He turned to look at Lone Moon as if he was a wounded cub. What? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Is this the first time you've been lied to? Don't worry, you'll get used to it after a few more times. What kind of logic was that? Fatty frowned, but for some reason he did not feel that upset anymore. After a while he said, Master, you're saying that court? Chanji was lying when he said that he was going to reseal the ferocious beast. He purposely locked us in here. The seal was indeed a lie, but the ferocious beast might not be the same. Fatty was stunned. Roar! In the next moment, a loud roar resounded in his ears. A few meters away, two balls of red light suddenly appeared and floated towards them. Upon closer inspection, they realized that they were actually a pair of eyes. Beneath the eyes was a huge monster that they could not see clearly. Its entire body was black and it was shrouded in layers of black yin chi. It opened its huge mouth and was about to bite the few of them. Fatty felt his heart sink. In the next moment, his entire body seemed to be frozen. He could not move at all. The overwhelming pressure seemed to be crushing him. He instinctively wanted to kneel down, but Lone Moon pulled him back and lifted him up. Seeing that the huge beast was about to bite him, I Ching was just about to act when Shining suddenly frowned. She said coldly, "It stinks." With that said, she suddenly raised her hand and slapped the beast. "I told you not to breathe at people. Don't you have any F***king idea that you have bad breath?" With a loud bang, the ferocious giant beast instantly smashed into the ground with a loud thud. A few crisp cracking sounds could be faintly heard as if something was breaking. Woot! The thick, indistinguishable yin chi on the ferocious beast's body instantly disappeared. Its head was directly stuck in the crack in the ground, unable to be pulled out no matter how hard it tried. It could only widen its pair of bloodshot eyes and look in the direction of the few people in horror. Its huge body trembled, and after a long time, it finally let out a weak cry. "Meow." Fatty, I Ching, Lone Moon, what happened to the ancient ferocious beast? Chef silently kept his sword. If he had known, he would have done it earlier. He would not have troubled Master. Chapter 491. It was as if Fatty was meeting Shining for the first time. He scanned her from head to toe in disbelief. Was Miss Shin so powerful? As if sensing his gaze, Shining suddenly turned around and handed something over to him. With a serious expression, she asked, "Do you want some fruit?" Fatty paused. He looked at the fruit in her hand that was obviously bitten off. Why was she asking him to eat fruit again? Wait, could it be that she despised the fact that the beast had just spat on the fruit? Was that why she wanted to give it to him? No. Miss Shin was definitely not that kind of person. She must have seen that he was frightened, so she gave it to him to calm him down. She only gave him half of it because there was only one left. That must be it. No need. Thank you, Miss Shin. Fatty shook his head. Shin-ing retracted her hand with a look of disappointment. Then, she threw it away, took out a new one and continued to chew on it. Fatty? He felt as if he had been stabbed somewhere. It hurt. Where are we? Shin-ing asked. We should be underwater, Lone Moon replied casually. Then he took out a pearl and their surroundings lit up. It was not just the few of them. Everything around them lit up. It was only then that the Fatty discovered that they were indeed at the bottom of the water. They were surrounded by a bubble-like spirit formation. Lone Moon must have set up this array the moment they fell into the water. The bottom of the water was desolate. Apart from a trembling beast, there was nothing else. This place was not big. It was only a few 100 feet away. They could see the end of it at a glance. It looked like a body of water that had been specially created. Lone Moon controlled the barrier and brought the few of them to the bottom of the water. They looked around but did not find anything special. Master. Fatty looked at Lone Moon, who seemed to be looking for something. He could not help but ask, "When did you find out that Chanji was lying to us?" Looking at how calm they were just now, it was obvious that they knew Chanji's motive and came here on purpose. Lone Moon glanced at him and replied, "From the moment they told me that the beast in the seal was the sorrowful beast. Wasn't that right from the beginning?" Chanji acted like he did not want to implicate us, yet he did not hide the fact that the beast was sealed. Lone Moon snorted. He said he would send us away, yet he made it so clear about the seal. Isn't he obviously trying to drag us down with him? Even the disciple who said he would bring them down the mountain was brought here after Lone Moon had said a few words. It was obvious that it had been arranged from the very beginning. Did they think that he couldn't see through this trick of loosening the reins only to grasp them better? He kept saying that the seal was unstable a few months ago, but we only arrived at Howran Court a month ago. If he really didn't want to implicate us, why did he suggest for us to come here? Chanji to the sorrowful, Chan Long as he said Chan Chanji and Dao. Time as he, Chan Xiao and time as well. Time as two. Sorrowful beast could destroy a small world. But this did not include the sorrowful beast. Chef had told him that the sorrowful beast was an earth beast. Earth beasts were connected to the earth veins of their habitat. Earth beasts could not leave their habitat. In other words, the sorrowful beast was a shut-in beast. Unless it was in danger, it would not come out. Others might not know about this, but Chef, who had inherited the divine heritage, knew it very well. This way it was obvious that they were talking about the seal array. They were trying to lure them into the array. But I have no enmity with Howran Court. Why would they do this? Fatty still could not understand. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. What else could it be? Fatty paused and pointed at himself. Meh. Do we have any other Tripiakes meat here? What was Tripiakes meat? But they are Buddhist cultivators? Fatty's eyes widened in disbelief. We can't be sure if they are real Buddhist cultivators. Lone Moon frowned. They must have other motives for locking us here. Let's find out what else is here apart from the beast. So the few of them looked around but still did not find anything special. Chef, did you find anything? I Ching shook his head. We can see everything here at one glance. There's nothing strange. That's strange. Lone Moon frowned. Why did they put in so much effort to lock us in here? Maybe they don't want to do anything? Shining suddenly said. The two of them paused and then reacted. That's right. Those people did not know what they were capable of. At most, they would think that they were soul formation cultivators. Under normal circumstances, if they came in and there was a beast inside, it was most likely that, at that moment, 3 pairs of eyes looked down at the beast below. The beast whose head was still stuck in the crack was shocked and shook even more violently. Meow meow meow. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He raised his hand and conjured a chain. He tied the beast up and pulled hard. Only then did Weeping Beast come out. The ferocious beast, which had finally managed to escape, looked up at them weakly. More accurately, it looked at Shining and its whole body trembled. Meow, it cried out. It turned and lowered its head. Then it stuffed its head back in. This time it was not stuck. Its whole head was in the crack. Only a ball of black chi was left outside. It shook so hard that it looked like it was going to fall apart. Lone Moon, I Ching, Fatty, how timid was it? It's just a slap, that's all. Lone Moon had no choice but to pull it out again. He even conjured an earth elemental spell to fill up the crack in the ground. Weeping Beast had nowhere to hide. It turned around in a panic. Finally, its eyes rolled back and it fell to the ground, motionless. It pretended to be dead. The 3 of them, they gave it 0 points for pretending to be dead. Did it think they were blind? Lone Moon sighed and did not care about it anymore. If Chanji and the others' goal was Fatty's flesh and blood, then it doesn't make sense for them to send him in. Weeping Beast liked to eat flesh and blood too. What good would it do them if Fatty was eaten? Lone Moon looked at the cowardly beast. Unless, there's something special about Weeping Beast. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something. He turned to I Ching and said, Chef, throw the beast in your storage bag to Weeping Beast. The master and disciple pair turned to look at him and sent a wave of resentment. Shining, that has to be eaten. I Ching, that's master's. All right, I'll pay for your food. Chapter 492. I Ching glanced at Shining, then hesitantly opened his storage bag. After searching around for a long time, he finally took out a fish that weighed more than 10 kilograms and handed it over. Here. This was the smallest he had. Lone Moon turned and threw it at the beast below. Perhaps it was too afraid. Chi did not move at all. It continued to lie on the ground, pretending to be dead. Chef, bring Shining further away, Lone Moon said. Only then did I Ching conjure a seal to create a bubble circle. He brought his master along and swam further away. After a while, Si Chi finally moved. A small part of its body, which was made up of black yin chi, carefully moved towards the fish beside it, as if to make sure that no one was stopping it. Only then did he straighten his body and pounce towards the fish with lightning speed. The black aura on its body dispersed and wrapped around the fish. Not long after, he spat out another complete fish bone from his mouth. Lone Moon paused. It doesn't eat bones. By right, this beast, which was made up of yin chi, should be able to digest anything. What's more, whether it was a demon or a human cultivator, bones contain more spirit energy than flesh and blood. Yet Si Chi did not eat them. Could it be that Chan Ji and the other's goal was... Just as he was thinking about it, Si Chi flipped over once again and began to play dead. There seems to be something on its stomach. Fatty suddenly pointed downwards. Lone Moon took a closer look. Indeed, there seemed to be something drawn on Si Chi's stomach. He did not notice it because of the heavy yin chi earlier. Now there seemed to be a faint white light. He called Chef back and flew down to take a closer look. This is an array formation. Between the heavy black chi, there was indeed an array formation. It was glowing faintly as if it had just been activated. The more Si Chi trembled, the brighter the array formation became. It looks like a transportation array, I Ching said. Just as he finished speaking, there was a flash of white light. Something flew into the array formation. Lone Moon turned back and saw that the fish bone on the ground had disappeared. Chan Ji and the other's goal was indeed Fatty's corpse. Lone Moon's heart sank. He looked up at the group. Let's go into the array. He made a hand seal and activated the teleportation formation on Weeping's body. In an instant, a bright white light enveloped the four of them. In the next moment, their figures flashed and they instantly appeared in another body of water. Compared to the darkness of the weeping beast, this place was the complete opposite. Golden light shone everywhere and it was even a little dazzling. Large patches of golden light lit up below, as if the entire body of water had turned golden. He looked down and saw something emitting a golden light. This light was very strange. It was not aggressive at all. Instead, it was warm. Was this the light of merit? Lone Moon paused and subconsciously descended. What he saw shocked them so much that they sucked in a breath of cold air. Bones. There were corpses all over the ground, covering the entire bottom of the water, so dense that there was not a single gap. At first glance, there were hundreds of corpses. Some of them seemed to be eternally old, with half of their bodies submerged in the mud. Some of the skeletons were completely exposed, but they were not complete. There were even some skeletons with obvious signs of fracture. However, all of these skeletons were emitting a faint golden light. All of the light at the bottom of the water came from them. For a moment, the few of them were stunned and did not speak for a long time. Until Fatty murmured, "These are golden bodies, golden bodies?" His face suddenly paled and he began to breathe heavily, as if he had been hit by something. His eyes were listless. "Fatty?" Lone Moon paused and then regained his senses. "What's wrong with you? Why are you suddenly... Wait, why are you crying?" "Crying?" Fatty was stunned. He wiped his face and realized that he did not know when his face was covered in tears. His expression was blank, but his face became even paler. "Yes, why am I crying? What's wrong with me, Master?" Hey, Fatty, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me." He really looked too abnormal. "I don't know." Fatty cried even harder, but his tears could not be stopped. They flowed more and more. He seemed to be unable to bear it and squatted down. "I don't know. I'm just... Miss Shin, why am I..." He subconsciously looked toward Shining, only to feel a strange emotion welling up in his heart. It was so heavy that he almost could not breathe. For some reason he just wanted to cry at Shining. He also did not know why he looked for her, but he could not help it. "Miss Shin, He looked like he wanted to say something but could not say it. Shining looked straight at him, her eyes darkening. Suddenly she reached out and touched the top of his head. "I already know." Fatty was stunned. He only felt a trace of warmth coming from the top of his head. Only then did his chaotic thoughts calm down. The strange emotion in the bottom of his heart also dissipated. In the next moment he slowly closed his eyes and fainted. "What's going on?" Lone Moon reflexively helped Fatty up. "What's wrong with Fatty?" Shining did not speak. Even I Ching's expression darkened at the side, with a hint of anger. "Chef." He could only look at I Ching. I Ching clenched his fists by his side, then said, "Father Nyo, a few days ago on an island near Haoran Court, I found many similar spirit herbs. What spirit herbs? Lone Moon was stunned. He did not understand why he suddenly said this. Soul-nourishing grass. Soul-nourishing. Lone Moon's eyes widened. You mean those elixirs with soul-guiding powder in them came from Haoran Court? Yes. I Ching nodded. The Unkrupp Sea is full of yin qi. It is the most suitable place for soul-nourishing grass to grow. And the nearby islands are full of this kind of spirit herb. So only they could bear to add soul-guiding powder to ordinary elixirs. And only they had it. But what has this got to do with Fatty? I Ching's expression darkened. Father Nyo, do you remember what happened to the cultivator that Master and I met? That cultivator was not a reincarnated. Lone Moon stopped mid-sentence. He suddenly thought of something. His face paled instantly. He turned to look at Fatty in disbelief. After that cultivator ate that elixir, he was immediately reincarnated, I Ching continued. The elixir naturally does not have such an effect. It only left a mark on his primordial spirit. Someone found this mark and directly reincarnated him into this small world. Cultivators in the lower realm naturally do not have this ability, but Haoran Court has an earth immortal. I Ching's expression darkened. As someone from the immortal realm, he naturally has a way to interfere with reincarnation. Together with the soul-nourishing grass, it is not hard to guess who the person who reincarnated that cultivator into the same small world was. That elixir with soul-guiding powder only left a mark so that the people of Haoran Court could more easily find his soul. And Fatty. Chapter 493. I Ching looked down at Fatty, who had already fainted, and directly conjured a seal. A stream of spirit qi instantly swept towards his primordial spirit, and in no time, a red mark slowly floated above Fatty's head. Haoran Court and Divine Imperial Sect are in cahoots. Fatty was already imprinted long ago. I Ching let out a long sigh and said, they racked their brains to transfer Fatty's corpse here, not wanting Fatty's soul to reincarnate into other small worlds, and in addition, rumor has it that the previous sect masters of Divine Imperial Sect were born weak and could not live past 30, all these added together, it's obvious. I Ching looked down at the surrounding bones and said word by word, it's not Fatty's first time being the sect master of Divine Imperial Sect, and these bones are all Fatty. The Fatty who would be stripped of his flesh and blood by those cultivators in every lifetime for ascension, and even his bones would be squeezed out of him to the last bit of merit. That's why when he arrived here, he suddenly became so abnormal, so agitated, because every piece of bone at the bottom of the water was all him. Because of his special flesh and blood, he was a golden body of merit in every lifetime. That's why in every lifetime he reincarnated in this small world, he died in the hands of those cultivators. For the so-called cultivation, they used him completely. They even left imprints on his primordial spirit, controlling all his reincarnations, and kept him in Divine Imperial Sect like a pig waiting to be slaughtered. He couldn't help but cry to Sheneng, but it was just complaining, an injustice that even the heavenly Tao couldn't sue. He could only complain to Sheneng. Shit. Lone Moon shouted, a never-before-felt anger rising from the bottom of his heart. These bastards. Instantly, the sword qi on his body burst out uncontrollably, sweeping towards the entire bottom of the water like a sharp blade, and in an instant, all the bones on the ground were turned into ashes. The soaring sword qi broke out of the water, and the water that was originally more than 10 meters deep instantly evaporated. Lone Moon's figure flashed and he was already flying up into the sky. I Ching subconsciously summoned his sword, wanting to follow and help. Chef. Sheneng suddenly tugged at him. When adults do things, we children shouldn't interfere. With that said, she pointed to the person at her feet. Take Fatty, we'll just watch. If you leave, no one will carry Fatty. Yes, master. I Ching sheathed his sword without hesitation. He picked up Fatty, who weighed more than 150 kilograms, and directly flew out of the completely dry water. When they flew up, they found out that they were in the huge lotus pond at the back mountain of Haoran Court. Sure enough, the thick stench of blood and killing intent he smelled in this place was not wrong at all. Speaking of which, it was quite ironic. A group of Buddhist cultivators who focused on cultivating merit actually all had their cultivation base from the corpses of those who died wrongfully in this pool. The commotion here naturally alerted the people of Haoran Court. In less than 10 breaths' time, Chanji led the group of cultivators out. When he saw Lone Moon in the sky, he was shocked and his face was filled with disbelief. You? How could you? Chanji's eyes widened. That's impossible. Lone Moon sneered. Are you surprised that you didn't get eaten by the beast as you wished? Don't worry, you'll be even more surprised. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned his hand and a sky full of spiritual swords instantly appeared. They densely occupied the entire sky and set up a sky full of swords. With a completely irresistible pressure, they blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chanji's legs trembled. He lost his balance and fell from the sky. The other cultivators around him were the same. They were so suppressed that they could not even lift their heads. Who exactly are you? Chanji looked at the person in the sky in shock. The kind mask on his face was long gone. In fact, there was a vicious look on his face. This kind of power could not belong to an ordinary cultivator. Suddenly, he thought of something and widened his eyes. Could this person be someone from the upper realm? Who am I? I'm Fatty's master. Lone Moon's eyes turned cold. I'm not much of a person. I'm just very protective. Although he's a fatty, it's not your place to bully him. As he spoke, an even more powerful force descended. The people below could not withstand it. They felt their blood boil and spat out blood. Ayaya. Xining clicked her tongue in an exaggerated manner. She looked up at the furious Father Nyo and said, Father Nyo really treats Fatty differently. I Ching paused and hurriedly said, Master is right. Chanji could not hold on any longer. Just as his divine perception was about to be crushed by the suppressive force, a figure suddenly flew up from the mountain peak. Heretic cultivator, don't you dare be so arrogant. The patriarch of Hao Ran Court, Earth Immortal Jingda, rushed out and threw the Dharma artifact in his hand at Lone Moon. Instantly, a huge green umbrella appeared in the sky. It grew 10 times bigger and emitted a white light. It attacked Lone Moon. Immortal artifact? Lone Moon paused. He recognized that this was the umbrella that Divine Imperial Sect had taken out twice. They were indeed jackals of the same tribe. The anger in Lone Moon's heart rose once again. He waved the sword in his hand and a ray of sword chi flew towards the umbrella. Humph, you think you can defeat me? Before Jingda could finish his sentence, the umbrella was cut in half by the sword. All the immortal chi disappeared and the umbrella fell to the ground. Lone Moon had not liked this umbrella for a long time. It was clearly a piece of trash. How many times had it appeared? Jingda's eyes widened in disbelief. His immortal artifact was immediately hit by a huge pain in his chest. The backlash from the destruction of his Dharma artifact hit him. His chi and blood flowed in reverse and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He could not even fly his sword and fell to the ground with Chanji and the others. Humph, what kind of trash dares to call itself an immortal artifact? Lone Moon's mocking mode was on full display. I'll show you what a real immortal artifact is. With that said, he turned his hand and a huge golden bell appeared in his hand. It grew bigger instantly. I Ching, who was watching the show from below, stiffened. Frowning, he asked, Master, Father Nyo's is a divine artifact, right? This was obviously the divine refining bell, one of the 10 great divine artifacts. Although this was obviously a replica that Father Nyo had Sun Shu make, it was still a divine artifact. Xining patted his shoulder. Hey, if Father Nyo says it's an immortal artifact, then it is an immortal artifact, right? Master is right, that is an immortal artifact. Fatty, who had just woken up, the divine refining bell had already fallen. I Ching hurriedly brought his master and the 150-kilogram Fatty out of Hao Ran Court. They hid further away. In the next moment there was a series of rumbling sounds. Under the immense pressure, a large portion of the originally magnificent palace collapsed. The entire mountain of Hao Ran Court began to collapse, falling into the sea below as if it was falling apart. Just as Chanji and the others were about to be crushed under the bell, a golden light flashed. The falling divine refining bell suddenly stopped in midair. Chapter 494. Lone Moon frowned. He saw that the golden light was coming from the people of Hao Ran Court. The cultivators paused, then a look of joy appeared on their faces. It's the light of merit. We have merit on us. Heretic cultivator, don't even think about hurting us. Merit? Lone Moon immediately thought of the pool of corpses. The anger in his heart grew. Stealing merit counts as merit? He turned his hand and used his assistant's ability. Suddenly, the golden light on everyone's bodies turned into thousands of golden spots that flew into Lone Moon's palm and turned into a golden ball. Lone Moon glanced at it. The golden ball flashed twice and disappeared. He then looked up at a certain spot in the sky. Don't give this kind of thing to people randomly. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky. As if responding to him, there was an inexplicable sense of grievance. And the people below who had lost their merit seemed to have torn off some kind of disguise. Suddenly, ugly black lines started to crawl all over their bodies. This was a sign that they were turning into demons. Oh, how is this possible? Chanji's eyes widened. That person looked like a cultivator. How could he take away their merit so easily? His face was full of fear. He thought of something and shouted to Jingde, "Patriarch, he's from the upper realm. He must be from the upper realm. Quick, get the immortal supremacy." Jingde paused. Then his eyes lit up. He seemed to have reacted. He hurriedly took out a purple talisman and forced himself to inject the last bit of spirit energy into it. He shouted, "I beg the immortal supremacy to descend and protect the disciples of Haoran Court." The other disciples followed suit and shouted, "I beg the immortal supremacy to descend and protect the disciples of Haoran Court." Lone Moon, who was about to continue activating the divine refining bell, paused. From the looks of it, Fatty's matter had something to do with the immortal realm? With a thought, he kept the bell. All right. He waited to see which bastard from the immortal realm it was. Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit, suddenly said, "Open the realm gate." "Master." I Ching was confused. "But this realm gate is locked by the heavenly Tao. If we force it open, you can open it now." I Ching paused, then seemed to think of something and nodded. "Yes, master." He raised his head and glanced at the sky. With just a thought, the nomological power that was locking the realm gate up above instantly dispersed, and the realm gate opened. Almost at the instant the realm gate returned to normal, a ray of heavenly light shone down from the sky. It was as if a door had opened up in the sky. The celestial chi that filled the sky immediately surged into this small world. In an instant, even the half-collapsed Haoran Court spirit plants began to grow wildly, covering the entire ruins. "It's the immortal venerable. The immortal venerable has arrived." A severely injured disciple cried out in surprise. He looked at the light in the sky excitedly, and the fear in his heart was swept away. Even Chanji and Jingde looked excited, as if they were about to make a comeback. At the same time, an ethereal voice came from the sky. "Who dares to bully my disciples and grand disciples?" Loneman's eyes narrowed. Suddenly he felt that he had hit them too lightly just now. He should let them know what it meant to feel fear from the bottom of the cultivation world. The light in the sky grew brighter and brighter. A moment later, a figure with immortal chi appeared in the sky, hidden among the clouds. Accompanied by the heavenly voice, the figure floated down slowly. Loneman's mouth twitched. He was getting impatient from waiting. He could not help but scold, "What are you waiting for? If you want to come down, then come down. Why are you playing background music for yourself?" With that said, he activated the sword array in the sky and threw it towards the sky. In an instant, the sword array wrapped around the foot that had just appeared in the sky and pulled it down. Aya. The so-called immortal supremacy in the sky suddenly fell like a kite with a broken string, crashing onto the ground. "And you guys?" Lone Moon continued to look up at the sky. "If you want to come down, then come down together." With that, the sword array in the sky surged into the entrance of the sky. The next moment, the sky seemed to be filled with dumplings. Dong, 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 one after another, a series of people fell from the sky, crashing into the group of old and weak people in Haoran Court. Some of them could not dodge in time and were hit squarely. Chanji, Jingde, everyone, what was going on? What just happened? How dare you? Among the immortals who were pulled down for no reason, the one with the highest cultivation level immediately regained his composure. Immortal chi exploded from his body. "Who dares to plot against me? Yo, an acquaintance. I didn't expect." Lone Moon flew down and looked at the immortal who had just spoken. "Country Emperor Yutsong, long time no see." The person who had come was the Emperor of East Sui Yutsong, who had gone to Invincible Sect to report that something was wrong in the lower realm. Lone Moon did not expect that he would interfere in Fatty's matter. He suddenly remembered the sudden rise of East Sui in the Bo Sea. Now it seemed that the chaos in the rules of this small world was caused by them. More than half of the cultivators from East Sui who had ascended from this small world were probably related to Fatty's many past lives. "Young Emperor." Lone Moon. Yutsong paused. His face paled as he recognized the person in front of him. Instinctively, he looked around and found I Ching standing nearby. "Celestial Emperor I Ching. How is this possible? The realm gate Did you just open it?" Lone Moon's expression darkened. Yutsong, do you think we don't know why the realm gate was closed? Yutsong lowered his head. A hint of panic flashed across his eyes. The people of this small world do not follow the right path. They use the blood and flesh of others as sacrifices to increase their cultivation level. They are delusional enough to hide from the heavens and cause the realm gate to close. Lone Moon scanned the people from Haoran Court, then looked at Yutsong and the others. If I'm not wrong, there are many immortal cultivators from East Sui who used this method to ascend. Yutsong's expression changed, but he forced a smile. Young Emperor Lone Moon, what are you talking about? We came to the lower realm today because the realm gate suddenly opened. We wanted to find out what was going on. What blood and flesh sacrificed to hide from the heavens? I don't know. Does Country Emperor, you really think that we don't know anything? Did these people ask their own immortal supremacies to open the heavenly gate just now? I do have subordinates who are Buddhist cultivators from this sect. But that has nothing to do with me. I have no idea what they are doing in the lower realm. Yutsong still refused to admit it. He looked at I Ching in the distance with some fear. Young Emperor Lone Moon, please don't accuse innocent people in front of the Celestial Emperor. Is that so? Lone Moon could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He waved his hand and an unfamiliar yet irresistible suppressive force swept towards them. Yutsong instinctively put up a defensive stance. But the suppressive force was not aggressive. The next moment, the immortal chi on their bodies dissipated. Then, the immortals who had just come to the lower realm emitted a faint golden light of merit. It was the same as the one on Chanji and the others. His heart sank. His face turned pale. How could this be? He had tried his best to get rid of it. How could it appear again? Country Emperor, may I ask, where did the thick golden light of merit on your body come from? I was a Buddhist cultivator when I was in the lower realm. Yutsong's expression was completely messed up. He braced himself and said, that's right. I changed my cultivation after that. Can't I? Of course you can change your cultivation. Lone Moon laughed coldly. But are the subordinates behind you going to change their cultivation like you? What a coincidence. Chapter 495. Yutsong was stumped by him and his expression darkened. His gaze towards Lone Moon already carried a hint of hatred, as if he had predicted that today's matter would not end peacefully. He changed his flustered look from earlier and glared at him, saying, Young Lord Lone Moon's action, are you going to stand up for someone else? I just can't stand you vermin disturbing the order of this world. Humph, what order? Yutsong laughed coldly. Why can't I have a more effective way of ascending when I have the opportunity at the sacred arrival realm? It's all cultivation. Is it wrong just because we are faster and easier? The method you're talking about is to conspire with the cultivators of the lower realm to sacrifice someone alive and use the primordial spirit imprint to imprison him for eternity? How could such a person be worthy of being an immortal? Why can't we? Yutsong retorted loudly. Not just him, the people behind him, including the people of Haoran Court, all looked as if it was a matter of course. Sacrificing him alone can help all of us achieve the great Tao. Why not do such a deal? If you want to blame someone, blame him. Why does he always have such a special constitution, born with a special body and spirit bones, and even his bones can emit merit? The more he spoke, the louder and more confident he became. He has such a special constitution because of the heavenly Tao. Then we should use his flesh and blood to ascend. That should be our opportunity. The fact that we can successfully ascend to the upper realm is the best proof. This is the will of the heavens. What right do you have to say that it's our fault? The moment he finished speaking, the others echoed, feeling that they were making more and more sense. That's right. He was born with such a constitution, he should be food for others. A special body and spirit bones. Such a heaven-defying constitution should not appear in a human. That's right. He actually has the body of a special treasure. Of course, he only has the fate of a special treasure. Spirit plants and plants can all be used as immortal ascension materials. Why can't he? The more they spoke, the more outrageous they became. They no longer treated Fatty as a person but as an object, a spirit plant. Fatty, who had just woken up, paled as he listened. His whole body began to tremble. His body swayed and he almost lost his balance. Shining helped him up. After some thought, she suddenly tilted her head and said, You're a human. Don't bother with small animals. Fatty was stunned for a moment, not understanding what she meant. Chef then explained, What Master means is that those are not fit to be called humans, they are just beasts. Fatty was stunned. A trace of warmth flowed from the bottom of his heart, melting away the chill that had just risen in his heart. In fact, when he saw the corpses in the lotus pond, he had already sensed that they were his. Although he didn't have the memories of his past life from what they said, he knew how he died. These were clearly high and mighty immortals who had skinned him alive so many times. How could they still be so bold and righteous, criticizing him for having such a body? Why didn't they feel the slightest burden in their hearts? They didn't even feel that it was wrong. But what did he do wrong? Was it because he had a special body? He couldn't help but think that if he hadn't met his master and Miss Shen in this life, he would still have become the material for immortal ascension that they spoke of. He wouldn't even be worthy to be called a person, right? He couldn't figure out why there was such a person in the world. Subconsciously, he moved a few steps behind Shining. Fortunately, there were still people who were different. On the other side, Chef glanced at him and frowned, but didn't stop his actions in the end. Young Emperor Lone Moon, we even passed the heavenly tribulation of ascension. That proves that there is nothing wrong with our method. Yutsong seemed to have found his courage. He even glanced at I Ching in the distance. Something that even the heavenly Tao doesn't care about is... Who said that the heavenly Tao doesn't care? Lone Moon's expression turned cold. He interrupted him directly. Do you really think that the heavenly Tao will be so blind to let you off after the disgusting and immoral things you have done? What do you mean? Yutsong was stunned. A trace of panic flashed across his eyes. But he felt that Lone Moon was bluffing. After all, Celestial Emperor I Ching didn't speak from the beginning to the end. He probably didn't want to interfere with mortal affairs. As long as he didn't come out and it was just young Emperor Lone Moon alone, he might not be afraid. Didn't you suspect the heavenly Tao? Lone Moon's smile became even colder. This group of people had completely disgusted him. Then I'll let you see what heavenly punishment is. Damn it. If he didn't beat them up until they couldn't take care of themselves, his surname wasn't Nyo. He couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with them. He raised his hand. Instantly, a familiar pressure went towards them. Before Yutsong and the rest could react, they felt their bodies lighten. It was as if something was pulled out from their bodies. Looking closely, they saw that the golden light that was originally wrapped around them had all turned into spots of light. They floated towards Lone Moon and then disappeared. Yutsong was shocked. Those merit came from the flesh and blood of that special person in the previous life. After they ascended, they tried all kinds of methods but to no avail. They could only hide it. They didn't expect Lone Moon to take it away so easily. Although merit was useful, in the upper realm, so many of them had the golden light of merit. It was indeed too eye-catching. Now that it was gone, it was to his liking. Although he didn't know what Lone Moon's goal was, he couldn't help but feel ecstatic. But the next moment, his heart sank again. Lone Moon directly summoned the sword array that filled the sky. Only this time, it wasn't the sword array that was condensed from spirit chi. Instead, it was immortal chi. There was a fire in his heart. He didn't plan to hold back. In an instant, the entire heaven and earth was filled with sharp sword chi. Young Emperor Lone Moon is forcing us to make a move? Yutsong's face darkened. He totally didn't think much of Lone Moon. The people behind him exchanged glances. One by one, they summoned their Dharma artifacts and directly flew over. Lone Moon snorted. With a turn of his hand, the fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly stopped. What are you doing? He raised his head to look at the sky. What was wrapped around his hand was the power of the rule. At the same time, the surroundings darkened. Large patches of thunder clouds suddenly appeared strangely in the sky. Layers and layers of thunder clouds suddenly appeared in the sky. Not a single ray of light could be seen. Between the layers of clouds, lightning of various colors flashed continuously. It brought with it a terrifying coercion of heaven and earth. Yutsong and the rest were stunned. They were shocked by the sudden appearance of the lightning tribulation that covered the entire sky. They stopped in midair and didn't dare to move. The coercion of heaven and earth above the clouds was really too terrifying. It was as if it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Even Yutsong had the urge to kneel down and worship under this kind of pressure. But this was a different scene in Lone Moon's eyes. There was no coercion of heaven and earth at all. Instead, from the layers of thunder clouds, he felt a trace of excitement. Even the power of the rule wrapped around his hand became exceptionally lively. It was as if there was a tiny voice constantly pleading in his ear. Let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. Let me kill them. Chapter 496. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Alright, the heavenly Tao had tolerated it for a long time. Looks like I don't have to do anything, so he kept the sword array and scanned the crowd below. "Alright, I'll see how the heavenly Tao takes care of you vermin." With that said, he turned and flew back in the direction of Shining and the others. He squeezed into Chef's boundary, took out a chair and sat down. Almost at the same time that Lone Moon sat down, the realm gate that had just been opened closed with a snap. The thunder clouds in the sky became even thicker. This is the heavenly tribulation. Everyone looked incredulous. Why would the heavenly tribulation suddenly appear? None of them had ascended. Moreover, this was the mortal realm. They were people of the immortal realm. Why would the heavenly tribulation of immortals appear in the mortal realm? Unfortunately, such a thing did happen. The thunder clouds were tens of times more severe than any heavenly tribulation. Finally, with a loud boom, tens of lightning of different colors descended from the sky at the same time, striking down on the crowd below. Yutsong and the others tried their best to resist, but to no avail. Even the best immortal weapons were shattered by the heavenly tribulation. Just one strike was enough to shatter their meridians and cause their cultivation to regress. Before they could react, the next lightning struck down as if it couldn't wait any longer. Now they finally understood why Lone Moon wanted to take away their merit. Unfortunately, it was too late. The lightning struck down one after another as if it would never stop. The thunder in the sky became more and more frequent. At first there were red, purple, white and all kinds of lightning. Even some that should not have appeared in the heavenly tribulation appeared. The lightning pressure around them was so thick that it was hard to breathe. Slowly the lightning became smaller. However, it wasn't that the heavenly Tao let these people off. It was purposely reducing the lightning tribulation. Like a soft knife cutting flesh, it struck slowly. Yet because of the first few lightning strikes, Yutsong and the others had no strength to resist. They could only let the lightning slowly disperse the little immortal force left in their bodies. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. How much did they hate these people? Even the unconscious heavenly Tao was angered to the point of using such a despicable move. Moreover, this lightning tribulation had been striking for too long. One strike had lasted for several months. At first they were watching with great interest, but as time went on they became annoyed. It wasn't until 3 months later that the thunderclouds in the sky slowly dispersed, and the once majestic Haoran court had been flattened. The entire mountain was only left with a small layer of the sea, and it wasn't even as big as the nearby islands. As for the original disciples, other than a few disciples with especially low cultivation bases who survived, including Yutsong and the rest, they all turned into that thick layer of dust on the ground. I Ching sensed for a moment before saying, "The nomological power of this small world has already recovered by half." Why is it only half? Lone Moon stared blankly for a moment, and then he realized that the nomological power that had just disappeared here was surging towards the north in large swathes, beginning to gather into thunderclouds. His eyes lit up instantly. Those tribulation clouds are floating towards Divine Imperial Sect. Indeed, the heavenly Tao remembered every debt clearly and had already gone to collect it. "Come, let's go to Divine Imperial Sect to watch the show." "But..." Fatty pointed at the sea ahead hesitantly. "What about that ferocious beast?" Although Weeping Beast was a shut-in beast, it was still an ancient ferocious beast. Lone Moon frowned. This was indeed a problem. That beastie still had to be dealt with. "I think we don't have to care about it," Chef suddenly said. Although Weeping Beast likes to eat flesh and blood, it was originally a ferocious beast with Yin Chi as its soul, Blood Chi as its spirit and Turbid Grievous Chi as its bones. Now that Haoran Court is gone, the corpses that filled the Lotus Pond have also disappeared. It won't be long before the Yin Chi astral winds on the uncrouped sea dissipate, and Weeping Beast will naturally disappear as well. Lone Moon stared blankly. "You mean, the Yin Chi on the sea came from that Lotus Pond?" I Ching nodded. "Shit." Lone Moon couldn't help but scold that bunch of scum from Haoran Court again. Indeed, they skinned a person alive so many times and even piled the corpse at the bottom of the pond. It would be strange if it didn't generate grievous chi. What's more, the corpse could not be buried and emitted Yin Chi all year round, causing the entire sea region to be bewildered. Weeping Beast did not suddenly appear but was born from the Yin Chi. And the reason why the nomological powers of this world were in chaos was also very clear. Yutsong and the others used the flesh and blood of Fatty's many previous lives as sacrifices, causing the heavenly Tao to mistakenly think that they were Fatty, and to raise their cultivation and ascend to the immortal realm. By the time the heavenly Tao realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. What's more, the heavenly Tao did not have sentience. At most it was a supercalculator that specialized in recording the rewards and punishments of living beings. After such a number of times, it naturally froze. In a situation where there was no other effective solution, it could only directly lock the realm gate to prevent more such situations from happening. It was only when they descended to the immortal realm and took back the merit that did not originally belong to them, and eliminated most of the source of the chaos, that the heavenly Tao then resumed its normal operation. Presumably, after it struck Divine Imperial Sect and the others, the nomological powers of this small world would completely return to normal. At the thought of this, the more they wanted to see what happened to those people from Divine Imperial Sect. Unfortunately, in the end, they still could not go watch this show because Fatty was about to ascend. Almost at the same time that the nomological powers recovered, Fatty's spirit chi began to increase explosively, the tribulation clouds in the sky began to gather again. This time it was an ordinary lightning tribulation for ascension. Lone Moon glanced at the strength of the lightning tribulation, not the least bit worried about Fatty. This bit of lightning tribulation was probably not as bad as when he fed Fatty moves. Let's return to the immortal realm first. He instructed Fatty, then pulled Shining and Chef through the realm gate, back to the immortal realm. There was no problem with Fatty going through the tribulation. The key was that he was afraid that the people above would tamper with it. He remembered that in Yu Tsang's East Sui, more than half of the immortals used that cheating method to ascend. Although Yu Tsang was already dead, there was no guarantee that other people would not tamper with Fatty. That was why they had to return as soon as possible, find out where Fatty was ascending and guard it in advance. But when the few of them reached the immortal realm, they realized that they had been overthinking. Almost the moment they crossed the realm gate, they heard the familiar sound of thunder. The sky of the immortal realm was dark, and the entire East Sui was covered in tribulation clouds, almost covering every immortal city. The rumbling sound of thunder came down one after another. Even the three people who just came to the immortal realm were almost dragged into it. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. The heavenly Tao was having fun striking the immortal realm, and now it was casually striking the immortal realm. It seemed like it had no intention of letting these people who cheated to ascend go. Lone Moon sighed. He did not care about the heavenly Tao's large-scale execution site, and pinched his fingers to calculate the location of Fatty's ascension, then brought Shining and Chef in that direction. Indeed, on a flat ground they sensed Fatty's aura. Immortal chi surged all around, already beginning to condense into the shape of an immortal ascension stage. They did not have to wait for long before they saw a beam of light shoot up into the sky. Chapter 497. That's right. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something and asked, where did Fatty get all that merit from? Yu Tsang and the others probably used that merit to deceive the heavenly Tao. And he actually has it in his body in every lifetime. How much merit did he have to be able to withstand the consumption of so many lifetimes? The master and disciple both stiffened for a moment, then squeezed out an innocent smile. I don't know, don't mind such details, Father Nyo. Do you want to eat a fruit? Master is right, Father Nyo, do you want to eat a pastry? Lone Moon's expression darkened and he looked at the two suspiciously. Are the two of you hiding something from me? No. *2*, they said it in unison, resolute and resolute. Ah, there definitely was. He was just about to lose his temper when the realm gate opened and Fatty's figure slowly rose from below. His immortal bones were already formed, the original spirit chi in his body began to transform into immortal chi. Perhaps because immortal chi was more concentrated than spirit chi, with this transformation, even Fatty's figure began to change. The most obvious change was that the circles of fat on his body disappeared. Fatty, who originally weighed more than 150 kilograms, became thinner at a speed visible to the naked eye. So he really was not growing fat but spirit chi. Lone Moon sighed and walked forward directly. The welcoming light around him also began to disappear, revealing a figure that had shrunk by half, and a simple but extraordinarily familiar face. Lone Moon's feet stopped, his eyes widened abruptly, staring at that face that was so familiar that it made his teeth itch. Instantly, he felt a mouthful of blood rush up his throat. He almost could not help but throw the fan in his hand. Fiend God. Holy shit. When he turned back, he realized that the master and disciple were already long gone. Damn it, he was going to kill those two little bastards. Fatty, on the other hand, was stunned. Once he saw the person in front of him, he immediately ran toward Lone Moon happily. Master, I successfully flew. Get lost. From now on you're expelled from the sect. No, Master. Father Nyo had been very irritable recently. He even felt like beating someone up, especially a certain two wastrels. It was obvious that the two of them had long guessed that Fatty was the reincarnation of the demon god, but they didn't tell him until they ascended. This was too much. Father Nyo, don't worry about such details, okay? Xining chewed on her fruit and comforted him. Yes, Father Nyo, I only guessed it when I was at the bottom of the lotus pond. I Ching also persuaded. Besides, a fatty is a fatty and a demon god is a demon god. They are two completely different people now. Master is right. Let bygones be bygones. Besides, Fatty doesn't remember. Lone Moon scanned the master and disciple coldly before replying, Scram. Don't think I'll give you another cent for your food expenses. No wonder his physique was so special. No wonder his bones were so rich in merit in every life. He was the god of creation and he had protected the plane for so long. It would be strange if his merit wasn't deep. Moreover, he was originally the god who controlled the heavenly Tao, so it was not strange that the heavenly Tao would open back doors for him everywhere. Although he understood the logic, he was still unhappy, okay? Even though he was no longer the god of creation, even though he understood that Fatty was just Fatty, when he thought about how the person he had worked so hard to teach all these years was actually the god fiend who had cheated him countless times in the past, he had the urge to shove Fatty back into the lower realm. Who cares who? I don't want to care anymore. Master. Fatty, who had no idea what was going on, looked confused. Why did Master suddenly look so scary when he looked at him? Although Lone Moon's attitude towards him in the past was not very good, it was not this serious. In fact, if Fatty made any big movements, he would receive a 360-degree death stare from Master. Could it be that the situation of his immortal ascension was wrong? Or did he miss something? Fatty's heart was bitter. He hugged his fat self, heart aching for him. He could only shrink in a corner of the immortal boat and tremble, afraid that Lone Moon would kick him off the boat. Perhaps because the pressure was too great, and in addition to the fact that he was hiding in a corner, there was nothing else to do other than cultivate. Fatty shrunk back, and returned to his original size. And he seemed to be a few kilograms heavier than before. Xining, I Ching, even though he was not broad-minded, he was still fat. He was indeed a ball. Perhaps it was because his current image was too different from that treacherous god-fiend of the past. Lone Moon's anger finally subsided a little. His expression also softened a little. At least he did not want to throw Fatty off the boat every now and then. Seeing this, Fatty suddenly understood something. So the reason why Master was angry was because he had lost so much weight. Was that why Master felt sorry for him? At that moment, Fatty's heart was filled with gratitude. He silently decided in his heart that he was determined to maintain his figure from now on. He no longer looked at Lone Moon with fear in his eyes. No matter how cold and cruel Fatty stared at him, Fatty looked back at him passionately. His eyes sparkled. Lone Moon could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Goosebumps rose all over his body. Could Fatty's brain have gone haywire after being beaten up by him? The god fiend was indeed a pervert. Fatty ascended to the East Sui country. As they were not in a rush, the few of them took the immortal boat back to the invincible immortal palace in the 9 heavens. Although they had stayed in the lower realm for many years, due to the time difference, they had only left for less than 2 days. After arriving in the upper realm, they were delayed for quite a long time. Lone Moon originally wanted to hand Fatty over to Yu Hong. After asking, he found out that Yu Hong had gone to another continent to do business. Even Siyu was not around. They had no choice but to return to the back of the palace to rest. Once they entered, they found a pile of all kinds of small animals in front of them. They were stacked on top of each other, filling up the entire courtyard. They could not even see the door. From time to time they could hear a few pitiful cries. What is this? Lone Moon's expression darkened. Who put all these animals here? Wait, why were these animals faintly emitting blue god power? These are divine beasts. Exalted goddess, you're back. Little Black jumped out of nowhere. Perhaps because he had married Yu Hong, he had the confidence of one of their own. He did not even tremble when he saw Xining. He glanced at the animals in the house. As if he had guessed what they were thinking, he explained, "Oh, these were sent by a person called Hong Meng. He said they are for you, exalted goddess." Hong Meng? Lone Moon paused. Only then did he remember about the other plane. Their plane was opened by Xining, so Hong Meng would indeed send some things over from time to time. But there was no need for him to send so many at once, right? It was enough to last them for a few years. Ever since you left, he would come here every morning to look for you, exalted goddess. Little Black continued. And the more he sent, the more he sent. That's why they piled up like this. Chapter 498. Lone Moon glanced at the master and disciple duo, who were trying their best to stuff a mountain of small animals into their own storage bags, with a look of pleasant surprise on their faces. They were even pulling Fatty along to help. He turned and asked Little Black, "Did he leave any message?" Hong Meng came so frequently, there must be something important. Little Black thought about it, then nodded. I think he said that he would wait for Exalted Goddess in some outer realm? Outer realm? Lone Moon was stunned. Could it be the Divine Realm? Shining left an entrance to the plane door there. It seemed like Hong Meng really had something important to do. He frowned and asked Little Black to bring Fatty down to find a place to stay. He went forward to help Shining and the others put away the ingredients in front of them. He explained the situation and then opened the passage to the Divine Realm. Hong Meng was indeed in the Divine Realm. He was sitting anxiously on the grass beside the plane tree. He seemed to have waited for a long time. The grass around him was almost flattened by him. "Lord, you're finally back." Seeing them appear, Hong Meng's face lit up. He immediately got up and walked over. Meng? Shining waved. "Hong Meng, Lone Moon, I Ching, can you have a name that you can remember?" "Exalted Goddess, my name is Hong Meng." Hong Meng frowned as he answered. Shining nodded. "I've received your little animals, Meng. They all look good. Thank you, Meng. All right, as long as you're happy. Hong Meng, do you have something important to tell me this time?" Lone Moon stepped forward and went back to the topic at hand. "Yes, something important." Hong Meng shook off the thoughts of Meng and then cupped his fists towards them seriously. "I'm here this time because something happened in our plane. I have no choice but to ask for your help, Lord, and your two assistants." "What happened to your plane again? Didn't it just reopen and start to breed living creatures? There can't be invaders, right?" His expression changed. "That's not it." Hong Meng shook his head. "Our plane has just been reborn. We didn't attract any invaders. Others wouldn't like it either. What's going on?" Hong Meng's expression changed. He looked at them awkwardly, then said with some guilt, "It's like this. Ever since we planted the plane origin, the living beings that originally belonged to our plane have indeed returned to the plane through the origin. But, there's a small problem?" "What small problem?" Lone Moon frowned. "The creatures in the origin have been lost in the turbidity for a long time, so they will more or less be infected with some ruthless energy. In order to guide the creatures, a new order must be created. However, ancient gods of creation like us cannot directly interfere with the matters of the plane. Thus, the other 12 decided to enter the cycle of reincarnation and reincarnate as ordinary creatures to guide everyone. And then, there was a small problem." Hong Meng looked anxious again. "After they reincarnated, they lost their memories. Although I'm guiding them in the dark, I'm not strong enough and I can't take care of everything. Plus, I can't interfere directly, so the new order has never been established." He looked up at the three expectantly. "The planes of the few lords have stabilized now. So may I be so bold to ask the three of you to follow me there and help me one more time?" "You mean you want us to help you rebuild the heavenly Tao?" Yes. Hong Meng nodded vigorously. "Not going." Lone Moon rejected instantly. Hong Meng was stunned. His expression fell. "That's your own plane's matter. Solve it yourselves?" Did he really think they were doing charity? "But, go Father Nyo." Shining suddenly spoke. "Shining." Lone Moon glared at her. "The last time he helped, you went straight into hibernation. Who knew what would happen this time?" "It's all right." Shining took a bite of her fruit and tilted her head. "Also, we've already kept the little animals." Lone Moon's expression darkened. "Then go back." The master and disciple hurriedly pressed down on their storage bags and took a step back together. Shining. These two bastards. Were they trying to anger him to death? Just as he was about to fly into a rage, Chef's voice sounded in his ear. "Father Nyo, do you remember what Senior Shinjing said when Master took over this plane?" Lone Moon glared at him and replied casually. "What has that got to do with this? Didn't Shinjing strongly oppose her taking over? She even said that if she really wanted the plane, she might as well split it herself." He stopped halfway and widened his eyes. "Holy shit. Are you serious?" I Ching nodded seriously. "That plane wasn't formed naturally. It was split by Master. Which means that Master is actually the manager there. Although we're not the plane's assistants, if something happens there, it would affect Master too. Damn it. Shining was such a hands-off boss. Wasn't it enough to dump one plane? Was she going to dump another one?" Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. which meant that they had to care about this. Father Nyo, why don't you eat a fruit to calm down? Shining hurriedly handed a fruit over. Lone Moon glared at her. Don't give me a green one if you can. Do you think I'm fatty? Shining could only shrink back. All right. Lone Moon then turned to look at Hong Meng. We'll help you one more time. Hong Meng's face was wild with joy. Although he didn't know why he suddenly changed his mind, he still cupped his fists and bowed solemnly. Thank you, sirs. He hurriedly turned and opened the plane gate, as if afraid that they would change their minds. Chef. Shining suddenly turned and said, Call Fatty over too. Yes, master. Wait. Lone Moon faltered. Why do you call Fatty? Yet I Ching's figure flashed. In the next moment he had already pulled the confused Fatty back. He has experience, Shining replied. Lone Moon still didn't agree. He did have experience in the past, but now he's already no longer a god fiend. Before he finished speaking, Shining suddenly raised her hand and pointed at Fatty's head. The thick immortal chi on Fatty's body suddenly disappeared. Instead, it faintly revealed an even more shocking aura, just like Hong Meng beside him. Shining regained Fatty's ability as a creation god. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Alright, as long as you guys are happy. Only Fatty, who didn't know what was going on, looked confused. He looked around and then at the few of them. Where was this? What just happened? Let's go. Go. To where? Who can explain this to me? The three people in front had already turned and walked through the glowing white door. Fatty looked around and had no choice but to follow them in. The white light flashed in front of them and the world in front of them changed. Before the few of them could see clearly, they heard a rumbling sound beside their ears. Something was smashing straight towards them. Chapter 499. The array formation around them was instantly activated, and a layer of transparent defensive array directly enveloped them inside. Only then did they see clearly that it was a fireball that had just fallen. There was a commotion in front of them. There were several groups of figures fighting in the air, spells and divine artifacts flying everywhere. The ground was scorched, and from time to time, there would be lightning or various spells falling. That was how the fireball fell. Everyone. What's going on? Hong Meng's face paled. He almost forgot that he had set up the exit here. He hurriedly said with some embarrassment and panic, I'm sorry, sir. I opened the exit in the wrong direction. Please come this way. With that said, he immediately turned and opened up a spatial tunnel. The few of them looked at him suspiciously, then turned and walked in, leaving this battlefield. The scenery in front of them changed again, and in the next instant, they were already in a place surrounded by purple mist. A tall palace stood in front of them, and there were 3 golden words written on top, Purple Night Palace. The few of them followed in and sat down in the main hall. Lone Moon then said, Tell me what's the situation here? Why can't the order of the heavenly Tao be established? Hong Meng's body trembled. After a while, he gritted his teeth and finally explained the situation of this plane in detail. In short, this plane was just a coffee table, and on it were all cups and cutlery. Originally, with Xin Ying's help, the plane had already been re-established. Furthermore, they were the gods of creation from the previous generation, so they had experience in rebuilding order. Actually, as long as they did not deliberately interfere, when the original purple source was completely integrated into this plane, living beings would naturally be born. It would even be like the other plane, extending more and more small worlds. But this process was very long, it could take hundreds of millions or even tens of billions of years. Hong Meng and the others waited patiently at first, but looking at the empty plane, they inevitably felt a little lonely. When people were lonely, it was easy to get into trouble. So they started to make trouble. In the beginning, he was only trying to reverse nurture the thin and weak original purple chi, hoping that it would grow faster. Of course, they did not do anything too overboard. After all, it was the foundation of the existence of living beings in this plane. And their method was effective. Slowly, new living beings were born in the plane. First, there were divine races like dragons and phoenixes, but because the original purple source was not strong enough. That was why these creatures only had physical forms, but no spiritual awareness. For example, last time he sent over a chicken that could lay spirit stones. Oh no, it was a phoenix. That was how it came about. Later, as the origin violet chi became more and more solid, some intelligent creatures began to appear. Many races appeared, and most importantly, the human race began to appear. However, because the soul in the source was summoned from the primal chaos, it was able to absorb the soul. More or less, there would be some residual chaos chi. This chaos chi would need to be reincarnated in the original source purple chi for many years before it would slowly disappear. However, due to loneliness, these creatures appeared in the world ahead of time. Due to the influence of primal chaos chi, they were somewhat violent in nature and possessed divine power. One race was stronger than the other. As a result, the naturally weak human race was pushed to the edge of survival, and there were a few times when they were almost completely exterminated. Of course, every plane had different races, so it didn't matter if there was one more or one less. But humans were different. Perhaps because this plane was split by Shining, the pattern here was more or less similar to I Ching's plane. The human race was weak, but they had strong reproductive abilities. What's more, the lifespan of mortals was less than 100 years. Wave after wave, they could soon bring all the original creatures back to this plane. In addition, the original source purple chi was equivalent to the river of forgetfulness. The more souls flowed in it, the stronger it became. While the other races were strong, they could live for thousands or tens of thousands of years. What's more, they could only give birth to one or two offspring every few thousand years. Some could only give birth to one or two children in their lifetime. In comparison, the living creatures could not circulate at all. Instead, it would increase the burden on the original source purple chi. This was also why, although the human race was weak, they were often favored by the heavenly Tao. Reproduction was the foundation of all living creatures. It was a pity that the main force, the human race, could not continue to survive under the threat of the other races. Hong Meng and the others then realized the seriousness of the problem. They hurriedly separated the human race from the other races. But the heavenly Tao was still not completely established. Without the human race, the other races were still in chaos. Looking at the mess of the plane, they were a little afraid. They did not dare to interfere casually. They were afraid that if they were not careful, it would be like the original source purple chi. They would almost cause the extinction of the human race. But there was still no hope of a new order being established. As long as the heavenly Tao was not established, the plane would be faced with countless dangers. So they thought of a way. They directly entered the reincarnation cycle and became a part of the heavenly Tao. Then they would use their reincarnated bodies to lead the races to dispel the turbid air and establish a new order. So they only left Hong Meng alone. They chose the 12 strongest races and entered the reincarnation cycle one after another. But while the ideal was rich, the reality was harsh. The 12 people who entered the reincarnation cycle were no longer the 12 ancient gods of the past. Having lost their memories, they forgot their mission. And because they were born with strong spirits, they quickly became the strongest in the race. Then, they started fighting amongst themselves. No matter how Hong Meng explicitly hinted or reminded them in a roundabout way of their previous mission, none of the 12 paid attention to him. They completely threw themselves into the new life. They directly led their race and provoked a full-scale war between the various races of the plane. This war was obviously going to reach the side of the human race again. In addition, more and more living beings returned to the original source purple chi from the chaos. The souls piled up in the original source became more and more abundant. But there was no place for them to be born here. This was no longer a matter of strengthening the original source purple chi. It was a matter of the original source purple chi exploding. Hong Meng really had no choice but to run to Shining to ask for help. Are you all retarded? Lone Moon glared at him. Even back then, Shining only dared to ask Chef to rewind. Where did they get the confidence to think that after reincarnation, they would still be the same people as before? This is the small problem you were talking about? No wonder they came to the battlefield the moment they came. The entire plane was probably almost destroyed, right? Wait. He suddenly thought of something. Those little animals that you bribed Shining with, don't tell me you picked them up in the war? Hong Meng stiffened. His face paled. He looked at him weakly. How can that be, Assistant Lone Moon? Ah. It was obviously the case. For all under #forget it. He sighed. Since you already found out that the 12 people did not go according to plan, and even aggravated the seriousness of the matter, why didn't you just make a move? Even if you can't make them come back, it would be good for them to be reincarnated as humans. He was an ancient god. This was something he could do. It would not cause the situation to worsen. Air? Chapter 500. Hong Meng's smile stiffened. He shifted uneasily on the chair. Actually, I tried, but he didn't continue speaking. His whole body shrunk, and his face was so ashamed that his head almost dropped to the ground. Lone Moon paused. Something connected in his mind. You didn't get beaten up by them, did you? he lowered his head even more. Holy shit. You really lost? What happened to being an ancient god? Even Fatty's face has been thrown away by you guys, okay? My lord. Hong Meng's face was completely red, and his eyes darted around as if he wanted to find a hole to hide in. When they entered reincarnation in order to suppress those races more conveniently, they reincarnated with their cultivation. So, Lone Moon stood up abruptly. Those 12 people are still at the ancient god level? Yes. Haha, goodbye. Lone Moon turned to leave. No. Hong Meng hugged his leg and turned to look at Shining. Milord promised to help me. Why are you hugging my leg when you're begging her? Lone Moon tried to pull his leg away. She promised. Go find her and ask her to help you find those 12 people. You caused this yourselves. I'm not going to care. 12? A certain someone who was chewing on a fruit paused. It sounded troublesome. He stood up immediately and said seriously, Father Nyo is right. We can't do anything about this. Chef, go home and cook. Yes, master, no problem, master. Hong Meng. What happened to help? This is not just because of the lack of order. It's because of the birth of spiritual awareness. Fatty suddenly spoke. Hong Meng paused and turned to look. What do you mean? Aren't they the first living beings born in this world? Fatty explained matter-of-factly. Let's not talk about the influence of the turbid chi. Whether it's demon beasts or humans, if there's no guidance, they won't naturally know what order is, right? Causing chaos and getting rid of dissidents is just their survival instinct. Fatty continued. Because no one tells them what's right and wrong. Even if the heavenly Tao were to punish them, they wouldn't know where they were wrong. Therefore, what they lacked was not order but people who could teach them what order was. Hong Meng was stunned. That was indeed the case. The reason why the 12 ancient gods reincarnated back then was to guide the various races to cultivate normally and end the chaos. It was just that they had gone astray as well. But I'm afraid that if I continue to interfere. He was really afraid that the more he helped, the more it would become messy. It was already a mess. Aren't you just trying to establish order? Fatty wasn't as worried as him. The situation can't get any worse. Why don't we just tell them what they should do? Hong Meng was still a little confused. What did that mean? Fatty means. Lone Moon sighed and said, you should open a school first. What do you mean by call? Perhaps it was because Hong Meng was crying out too miserably, and this plane was indeed related to Shining. Lone Moon did not manage to leave. He had agreed to help him rebuild the heavenly Tao. Fatty was right. The reason why it was a mess down there was not only because these races were affected by the remnant chi of chaos and were indeed cruel by nature. More importantly, there was no one who could suppress them and teach them how to be human. No, teach them how to be gods. That's right, those races that were fighting fiercely were all divine races. Originally, Hong Meng and the others had this opportunity because no matter how strong the divine races were, in the eyes of the dozen or so ancient gods, they were just a piece of cake. But Hong Meng was scared out of his wits by the fact that the human race was almost wiped out. He was too afraid that this plane that they had so painstakingly found would be destroyed by them before it could even grow up. What's more, this world had not formed the heavenly Tao yet, so they could not predict the future. That was why they came up with the reincarnation plan to reduce the impact. In the end, the matter was not resolved and they even lost their own people. They really did not interfere when they should, and blindly interfered when they shouldn't. The best way now was to build a platform for them to coexist peacefully, and teach them how to love each other, to build a harmonious and stable big plane. Therefore, on the third day of their arrival, the Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace branch was officially established. This time they changed the rules for the selection of principals. Whoever won would be the principal. Shin Ying lost unsurprisingly, and Chef, because he was holding a spatula, could only use a rock. Lone Moon could not help but use a cloth out of reflex, so the position of the principal naturally fell on Lone Moon's head. As for Hong Meng and Fatty, one had a criminal record, and the other's looks really affected the school's image, so they were directly disqualified from playing rock paper scissors. To show his seriousness, Lone Moon personally changed the signboard of the Purple Knight Palace to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch, and also watched as Hong Meng changed the square in front of the hall into a huge square that could accommodate tens of thousands of people. He originally wanted to put some chairs, but thinking of the divine race's thick skin and flesh, forget it, he let them stand. The school's transformation was complete. Next was the problem of recruiting students. Will they come? Hong Meng asked worriedly. Nonsense. Of course not. Hong Meng paused. Then all this we did, isn't it? For nothing? You didn't even put up a single advertisement. Who would know that you opened a school? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at him. Don't just grow old, don't grow a brain. Once we put up an advertisement, people will naturally come. What was an advertisement? Did it mean to advertise widely? Then how should we put up an advertisement? A fight is the best advertisement. What? Lone Moon ignored him and asked, tell me, what are the names of those 12 traitorous grandsons? Call them over, let Chef beat them up, then they will naturally not dare to do anything rash. Then teach them. Teach them until they learn well. He spoke seriously. This was not the time when he opened a sect. There was no competition, there was no need to consider reputation and such. Didn't you say that they are the leaders of the 12 races? If they stay here, the others will naturally come. Hong Meng thought about it. It seemed right. Then how do we call them over? Just directly issue a battle notice. Didn't most leaders care about their reputation? With that said, he raised his hand and produced a piece of paper, channeled his god power, and directly wrote, his words sharp, full of provocation, as mean could be, the kind that anyone who saw it would have a stomach full of anger. Then he made 11 copies of it, stuffed it to Hong Meng, and let him distribute it. Chapter 501. Hong Meng sneaked a glance and immediately closed it again. Luckily it wasn't for him. He would be furious after reading it. Then he conjured a seal and cast a spell. More than 10 battle invitations turned into flashes of light and flew out. The battle was set for the next day. As divine beings, he was not afraid that they could not make it. Even if the 12 of them joined forces, he did not think that Chef would lose based on his abilities. It was not that he was bragging, but he could crush them all. Even if there was an accident, there was still Shining. So Lone Moon was not worried at all. Then on the second day no one came. Lone Moon looked at the empty square, not knowing how to react. Could it be that they were too far and could not make it? No matter, he could wait another day. On the third day they still did not come. Could it be that the divine beings here did not have the basic ability to cut through the void? On the fourth day they still did not come. Could it be that the battle invitations were delayed and something went wrong with Hong Meng's spell? On the 10th day they still did not come. Could it be that they were scared out of their wits by his battle invitations? On the 15th day they still did not come. Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng, Fatty, the square, which could accommodate 10,000 people, was completely empty. A faint cold wind blew past, sending chills down one's spine. Holy shit, they actually dared to stand me up. Lone Moon's expression darkened and he pulled out his sword. Hong Meng, tell me where they are. He was going to destroy them. Father Nyo. Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit at the side, suddenly spoke. What? Those people are the first batch of indigenous people of this plane, right? So what? Can't I beat them up? No, this world has not even established rules. There is nothing. That includes words, right? Huh. You used the language of that plane to write the battle invitations. Can they understand it? Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng. Fatty, swoosh 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 swoosh. The 4 top experts were stabbed by a knife at the same time. A place called IQ suddenly ached. Although they did not want to admit it at this moment, they were all idiots. 12 Divine Race Encampment. Half a month ago, something strange happened in the various god clans. A divine object fell from the sky and landed in front of the clan leader. The divine item was squarish and crimson, with a faint golden glow on its body. It was as if it had a mind of its own. Whenever other clansmen approached it, it would fly away and land in the hands of the clan leader. The chief observed it day and night for 10 days and still did not know what it was. When he unintentionally opened it, he saw a long white scroll covered with tiny golden marks. Their appearances were extremely strange, and they would even float up from the god artifact one by one. They floated in the air and radiated light for a long time without falling. They were like glowing insects, emitting radiance in the dark night. It won't disappear until it's closed. The various races were astonished. Indeed, things that fell from the sky were extraordinary. There must be other uses for such a divine object. Thus, after one side investigated, they discovered that all 12 Protoss had received the exact same item. As they didn't like each other, they had a small fight every 3 days and a big fight every 5 days. The 12 god clans, who had a reason to fight and who had no reason to create a reason to fight, felt that they had to fight for such a good thing. Thus, without any doubt, without hesitation, the 12 god clans started fighting again. Chef, who finally reacted and was sent by Father Nyo to personally challenge them. Should he rush up and beat them up now? Or should he wait for them to finish fighting, then rush up and beat them up? Chef looked at the sky one last time, calculated the time for dinner and decided not to wait. Thus, he directly went up and beat up the leaders of the 12 god clans one by one. He also took care of a few beasts that were not afraid of death and rushed up to him on their own accord, bringing them back to roast. Then he looked at the Protoss who were lying on the ground trembling in fear. He took out a stack of paper, one for each person, and forced them over. As he did so, he said with a serious expression, "Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch, understand? All the gods." Only when he finished handing out the thick stack of paper did he turn around and tie up the 12 leaders like he was wrapping dumplings. He said word by word, "The few of you must understand." With that said, he dragged a string of people and flew away. The originally noisy scene fell into a strange silence. After a long time, the Protoss finally dared to get up. They looked down at the things that were forced into their hands. Instantly, a voice rang in everyone's ears. It was obvious that someone had learned his lesson last time. Not only could this advertisement be seen, but it could also be transmitted. A low and deep voice shouted from inside. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is a multifaceted, modern, all-round civil and military school dedicated to training high-end talents of the Protoss and building a perfect new world. Our school now has 5 teachers. 4 of them graduated from the management college in another plane, and 1 of them studied in the same college. All of them have almost perfect teaching experience, as well as perfect personal skills and near-perfect teaching methods. That voice came one after another with a motivational quality that could not be ignored. Everyone who heard it looked confused, but they could not help but feel an impulse for no reason, especially the last sentence. Do you want to become a stronger Protoss? Do you want to be the best among the Protoss? Do you want to be the strongest Protoss? Do you want to be as powerful as the person who beat up your clan leader? Come to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is your wisest choice. As long as you study here, you will become the strongest king. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and pick up the electricity beside you. Pui, come directly to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Address: Purple Knight Palace, right above Purple Cloud Mountain. Limited places, first come, first served. The Protoss all looked at each other, the passionate advertising message reverberating in their ears. After a long while, someone finally whispered, Is this true? Isn't the one who lives in Purple Knight Palace the old man who often comes to the battlefield to steal corpses and was beaten up by the clan leader? But that person just now was really powerful. Since the clan leader is not here, should we go and take a look? Thus, Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch finally successfully recruited its first batch of students. Lone Moon asked Chef to force the sound leaflet, and the publicity was quite effective. After I Ching kidnapped the leaders of the 12 races, within a few days, a large group of Protoss arrived in front of the palace. From a rough look, there were tens of thousands of people. Perhaps it was because Chef happened to be on the battlefield when he beat them up. At that time, there were many people, and the effect of the advertisement was maximized. These people did not retreat at all, but directly turned around and came to Purple Knight Palace. Chapter 502. Although most of these students were not really here to learn, they just wanted to see the situation. Some even wanted to save the 12 people. Of course, most of them were here to watch the show. Lone Moon did not care so much. Since they were here, they could not leave. Lone Moon asked Hong Meng to expand the square by 10 times, and then directly set up layers of arrays outside, locking all the divine race people inside. To put it nicely, closed education. With students and a venue, the next step was to officially start teaching. Lone Moon then thought of a major problem. These people did not have any foundation. It was not that they did not have the foundation of cultivation, but they did not even have the basic foundation of words, and even because of the influence of the chaotic aura, there might even be problems with their understanding. Because of this, the few of them had to hold a board meeting. These divine race people obviously had to start from the most basic literacy, but the key was who would teach them. I feel that the teaching standards and methods of our previous world are still more advanced. Lone Moon glanced at Shining. Shining, I have learned for hundreds of years and have forgotten most of it. Why not you teach? Shining, who was suddenly called, was stunned. We are not learning the same system. Are you sure you want me to teach? Shit. He almost forgot that she was only a student on Earth. She even had to repeat a year in primary school. Then what should we do? Chef, you do it? I also do not remember much about enlightenment. Chef shook his head. Lone Moon could only look at Hong Meng. I remember even longer. He hurriedly shook his hand. On the other hand, Fatty raised his hand weakly. Master, what, you want to teach? No, no, no. Fatty shook his head. I want to say, what do you think of Brother Rabbit? Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining. Lone Moon stood up and patted Fatty's shoulder. Fatty, it's been so long. You finally said something sensible. Was Master praising him or scolding him? Lone Moon did not delay and directly returned to the other plane, entered the previous small world and went to the southern land, and appeared in front of the blissfully eating carrots in the Demon Monarch Palace. The rabbit's paws trembled and it almost fell off the throne. Great immortal, why are you? Before it could finish speaking, Lone Moon pulled its ear over and said seriously, Rabbit, I'm giving you a chance to ascend to immortality. Oh no, I'm giving you a chance to become a god. Do you want it? Ah, dong. This time the rabbit really fell down. Was it hallucinating? Is identical. It was stunned for a long time before it nodded stiffly. Yes, I do, but it was just a rabbit. Becoming an immortal was already an extravagant hope, let alone becoming a god. As long as you think about it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon did not waste any more time talking nonsense with it. He picked up the rabbit and left. The rabbit was dumbfounded. By the time it reacted, it had already been thrown in front of a large group of strange animals. There were so many of them that it couldn't even see the end of them, and every single one of them was emitting a divine aura that made it tremble with fear. Rabbit's legs turned to jelly. If not for Lone Moon holding onto it, it would have fallen to the ground. They were all gods. Had it arrived at the god realm? Rabbit wanted to faint for a moment. Obviously, Lone Moon did not give it the chance. He directly stuffed a book into its hands. Here, this is the teaching material. You just need to teach them how to read for a while. The rabbit had not recovered from its daze. Read. Divine race? Great immortal, no, great god. I'm just a rabbit. Why? You can't read? I can read. This was not a question of whether it could read or not, right? Besides, why couldn't the divine race read? That's good. I'll leave it to you, rabbit. Lone Moon patted its shoulder and directly grabbed it and flew up to a high platform. He even set up several layers of arrays for it. The rabbit only felt that the divine aura that was suppressing it and suffocating it disappeared in an instant. When it regained its senses, Lone Moon was already gone. Only the rabbit was left standing high up on the platform. Below it was a black mass of divine race army that stretched as far as the eye could see. The rabbit's legs began to tremble again. Was this some ultimate test that Great Immortal had set for it? But since it was already here, it could only bite the bullet. With trembling hands, it flipped open the book. It was indeed a beginner's book. It was simple and easy to understand. It even had pictures. It wiped the cold sweat from its forehead and gritted its teeth. It turned around and sat on the praying mat on the platform. Almost instantly, an array was activated under its feet. A virtual image of it appeared in the sky. That image was very wide, almost covering the entire square. It appeared clearly in front of the students of the various races. The various races who had never seen such high technology were stunned. They quieted down immediately and looked up at the virtual image in the sky in shock. At the same time, the rabbit's voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. The rabbit flipped open the book in its hands. Instantly, the contents of the book appeared in the air like a PowerPoint presentation. Cough. Now let's start the lesson. The rabbit officially began its beginner's teaching career. Hence, from then on, there would often be sounds of geese drifting through the purple night palace, grass on the plains, and so on. The rabbit was a little afraid at first. After all, it was a group of Protoss in front of it, and it was just an ordinary lop-eared rabbit that had taken the back door to reach the 12th rank. Under the suppression of their race, it was natural for them to be afraid. But after being afraid for so long, it got used to it. Zero, not only did he teach it, but he would also encourage everyone to chant along with it. In the beginning, the Protoss below also harbored a sense of curiosity and novelty, and earnestly learned from the rabbit for a few days. But after a period of time, he found that every day was boring learning how to read. Some of them even wanted to rush out of the array formation. They were used to being wild and had never been restrained. In addition, they were born valiant, so their tempers were naturally not too good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be constantly fighting and causing chaos in the world. After failing to break out of the array formation, the divine race began to target the rabbit on the high platform. He wanted to grab it and use it as a hostage, but unfortunately he was injured by the formation on it. Since Lone Moon could bring the rabbit here without worry, he naturally had already thought of a way to deal with it. Looking at the square that was starting to be in a mess after a few days, Lone Moon directly released the head of the cult, Chef. There was only one effective way to deal with this group of troublesome students, and that was to just beat them up. Hence, after beating everyone up again, the entire teaching square was restored to order. Chef also carried his sword and patrolled the square from time to time every day. If he found someone disobedient, he would stab them with his sword. Anyway, the divine race had thick skin and flesh. Even if Chef attacked and got injured, he would recover in a few years. Chapter 503. In the beginning, Chef prevented them from betraying their master and hurting Rabbit. Then he prevented them from escaping. Then he prevented them from fighting among themselves. In the end, he only had to prevent them from sleeping. Rabbit's teaching also achieved some initial results. Whether it was Rabbit or the divine beings below, they actually did not need to sleep. In other words, there was no need for breaks between classes. They could continue teaching day and night. As a chatterbox, Rabbit had an extraordinary obsession with teaching. If they did not understand it once, he would say it twice. If they did not understand it twice, he would say it 10 times until they understood. Especially after discovering that they could not hurt him at all, he completely let go. He used his full level of verbal cannon. At most, he would chew on a carrot halfway to adjust his words. In fact, when he encountered a disobedient student, he would even stop and patiently guide them to give him some advice. "Sai, why do you have to do this? You know that you can't break this array and will even suffer a backlash. Why would he do such a foolish thing that would only bring him more benefits than benefits? Can't we be a little more peaceful? I'm here to teach you how to read. As long as you know and learn, you will learn in a few years. As the saying goes, one can only become a demon after suffering the hardest. Blah 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 blah. Hey, Supreme Divinity, what are you doing? How can you bite the divine friend beside you? As the saying goes, one must abstain from eating before one can cultivate. They are at least classmates who listen to classes together. How can you eat them? No matter how big the grudge is, with such feelings, it is time to let it go. You have to know. Blah blah blah. Oh, and that student who is scratching his feet. Please put them down. Can't you see that the students beside you have all fainted? We are all gods. We are fated to be gathered here. We should understand and respect each other. Can't you continue to scratch after school? Blah blah blah. If Rabbit's teaching skills were at level 1, then his ability to talk nonsense was at level 10. He would definitely read until you started to doubt human beings. No, the kind that doubted divine beings. At first, the divine beings did not know how to respond. They could only grit their teeth and listen to him until they felt that the whole world was filled with his persuasion. What was worse was that in order to help them learn how to read as soon as possible, the array that Lone Moon set up on the platform was directly connected to their divine senses. In other words, no matter what he said, the words would appear in the minds of the people listening below like subtitles. Therefore, as long as she opened her mouth, the golden words would drill straight into the minds of the gods, the kind that could not be blocked. No one could withstand such a barrage of attacks. So in the end, whenever it opened its mouth and said, that, all the gods burst into tears. We were wrong. I won't do it again. Master, I beg you. Can we go to class normally? You're worth teaching. The rabbit nodded satisfactorily and nibbled on a carrot while it was at it. The completely unemployed teaching director I Ching. It was better for him to return to the rear hall and help his master cook. Lone Moon also expressed his approval of the quality of Rabbit's teaching. Even his attitude towards Fatty was much better. He also began to consider the idea of letting the rabbit take on a few more classes after the literacy class ended. Of course, as a reward for an outstanding employee, he waved his hand and approved Rabbit's request to open up a plot of land at the back of the mountain to plant some radishes. Hong Meng. The floor seemed to be his. Rabbit taught for a whole 3 years. As it did not stop day and night, it taught like a cramming duck. It finally allowed these tens of thousands of illiterate people to lay a good foundation of words. Especially in the later stages, when Rabbit often wanted to reason, causing them to be highly nervous. Almost all of them could repeat fluently after Rabbit said it once, or else Rabbit would say it 100 times. Lone Moon also felt that it was time to start teaching other classes, so he decided to take a break and rest for a day. It would be his turn to teach starting tomorrow. Almost at the same time that Rabbit walked down the stage, all the gods heaved a sigh of relief. Their backs that had been straight for several years were instantly lowered. Some could not bear the sudden relief and fainted directly. Too scary. Even scarier than the one with the sword. So the so-called rabbit race was actually such a scary race? All the gods trembled in fear. Rabbit, who had finally finished class, was already happily pulling his good friend Fatty to plant radishes. After all, he had eaten them for 3 years and had finished all the stock. Lone Moon was supposed to start teaching the next day, but he realized that those gods who had fainted had not regained consciousness, so he had to delay it for another day. On the third day he started the second class. This time he was the one teaching personally. The first class was about transformation. That's right, although all the gods here were born with the art of transformation, but they could only change their original form, become bigger, smaller, and different colors. For example, in the field now, everyone had compressed their bodies to become several times smaller, otherwise they would not be able to sit down at all. But none of them could transform. The so-called transformation was to transform into human form, not a simple illusion or something like a temporary image, but the entire body and meridians had to change. The reason why they had to transform into human form was because the human form was the best form for cultivation, commonly known as the Tao body. Transforming into the Tao body was the first step to entering the Tao. Lone Moon was much more straightforward than Rabbit. He directly cast a spell and transmitted the transformation method into the consciousness of all the gods. He only left a sentence: "Follow this method and cultivate by yourselves, I will come and check in 5 days." All the gods were quite happy at first. They did not expect that this new master was much more straightforward than Master Rabbit. Finally, they did not have to endure the pain of a long continuous sentence drilling into their consciousness. All the gods felt that they had seen the light of hope, until they fell back to hell 5 days later. They never thought that Lone Moon's check was a one-by-one check. If the transformation did not pass, they had to start all over again until they learned it. Not only that, his requirements for transformation were also extremely strict. It was not as simple as transforming into 4 limbs and hiding one's original form. Too tall, too thin, too fat, too ugly, too short, too. Even too little hair was not allowed. Even if the transformation clothes were ugly, it was not allowed to pass. All the gods, they kept feeling that this master was even more sick than the previous one. What should they do? Please wait online, it's quite urgent. The kind that could kill. It was not that no one resisted, but because they really could not beat him. Forced to transform hundreds of times every day. Of course there were many gods who were so irritable that they wanted to fight, but before they could get within 3 feet of him they were beaten down. He indeed did not know how to nag like Master Rabbit, but he knew how to use poison. "You transformed into such an ugly form and you still have the nerve to show it to me. Do you want me to help you reforge?" "Reforge? Is your original form a pig? Are you so fat that you want to change races? Do you need me to send you into reincarnation to satisfy you?" "Reforge? This face of yours was transformed by that green bird just now, right? You are a mongoose, why are you trying to claim kinship with others?" "Reforge? And the two of you, why do you look so alike? Why do you look like a married couple in front of me? I am not even single, what right do you have to pretend to be a married couple in front of me?" Reforge. Chapter 504. Towards the end, Lone Moon said coldly, "If you can't even transform properly, you can only be little animals to be eaten." Lone Moon did not know if it was because he had a problem with their low efficiency of transformation or because he was tired of beating them up so badly. At first, the races didn't know what he meant. Until the next day he asked Chef to move the kitchen to the empty space in front of the hall. In front of the races he took out the corpses of his kind. He began to boil water, pluck feathers, cut, fry. At a table not far away, sat a figure dressed in red, holding chopsticks and knocking on the bowl, asking from time to time, "Chef, are you done? I'm so hungry." "Sai, why did he move the kitchen? It was already a minute late." "Yes, master, I'll be done soon, master." Yiching responded, stirring the food even faster. All the races shuddered, only feeling a chill straight into their hearts. What exalted master said, little animals to be eaten, would really be eaten. So scary. "Mama, I want to go home." "No, no, no, exalted master, I want to listen to the lesson." Suddenly, all the divine races began to miss the previous exalted Master Rabbit. Being nagged was better than being eaten. What was even scarier was that they actually felt a little fragrant. Under the pressure of being eaten at any moment, all the races began a new wave of learning with all their might. Their level of effort was even more than when Rabbit was in class. Even during the 3 times Lone Moon went to eat during the break between classes, they did not forget to make use of the time to practice. Only when Rabbit occasionally strolled over, all of them gave him a nostalgic look. Rabbit was dumbfounded. Maybe this was a group of good students who remembered old times. As the saying goes, there is only motivation when there is pressure. In less than 2 years, all the divine races learned how to transform. The originally messy square instantly changed into a group of handsome men and beautiful women, looking like stars. It could be said to have set the high standards of the divine race's attractiveness. From this moment on, Lone Moon officially taught them the orthodox cultivation method. Actually, the divine race's physique was already very strong. Naturally, there was no room for improvement. The only difference was how to use their own abilities more rationally and flexibly. And these were mostly based on their own understanding. What Lone Moon mainly taught was still the way to cultivate God power. Since these gods were the first batch of living beings in the world, the primal chaos energy in their bodies had to be purged. By practicing breathing and purifying their divine power, they could achieve the effect of purging the primal chaos energy from their bodies. The reason why they were so irritable and bloodthirsty was because of the chaotic energy in their bodies. These were emotions that were almost never seen in the divine race of the other plane. To the Shin clan, who could already transform into their Taoist bodies, this was not difficult at all. After Lone Moon taught them once and told them the things to take note of, they could already understand. Furthermore, the chaotic aura in his body was indeed decreasing. However, this was a very long process that required a lot of patience and willpower. Of course, he didn't know if the other races had the patience and perseverance for his team of teachers, but it was definitely possible for them to calm down. Compared to the previous 2 classes, which were filled with people reading aloud or wailing, the entire teaching square was as quiet as a chicken. Lone Moon had nothing to do, so he released his divine perception and carefully scanned the tens of thousands of students present. He realized that there were differences between the Protoss. Apart from the previous 12, who were forced to learn and were often beaten up the most badly, the rest of the divine race were not top-notch. The cultivation levels of the other divine races were actually not the highest. Just like the dragon race, the golden dragon was the highest, the black dragon was the lowest, and all the water race had the opportunity to cultivate to become a dragon. And the phoenix race's 9-feathered phoenix was the strongest. Among them, the 9-feathered fire phoenix was the strongest. Although the other 1-feathered ones were also phoenixes, they were obviously not on the same level. It was the same for these divine races. However, the difference this time was only in terms of brute force. There was actually no technical content. So even if they attacked together, they would be easily beaten down by Chef. The only ones who knew a little about cultivation were the 12 reincarnated ones. Although they lost their memories, they retained their cultivation because they were reincarnated. So they instinctively knew some moves that others did not know. This was also the reason why they could join forces to defeat Hong Meng. So compared to directly teaching them how to cultivate and improve their martial skills, it was better to teach them how to understand the heavenly Tao. Actually, be it the so-called heavenly Tao or nomological laws, they were all the lowest standards to maintain the operation of the entire world, the endless cycle. This was like the lowest bottom line of this plane. Within this bottom line, all living beings were protected, living and multiplying, the cycle of reincarnation. There were 3,000 great Taos for you to choose, but you could not touch this bottom line. For example, like the invaders or like divine imperial sects cheating to ascend, these were all not allowed. The former would cause the plane to be unstable. The latter disrupted reincarnation. The reason why the heavenly Tao locked that small world was actually not just because this method of ascension was evil and dishonorable, and even more not because Fatty was once a fiend god, but because they disrupted the order of reincarnation so that souls could be directly reincarnated without going through the underworld. And it was definitely not only Fatty who was doing this. The pills that Hao Ran Court refined that contained the soul-guiding powder was the best proof. They even distributed these pills to the various sections. This way, even if they were already dead, they could use the same method to reincarnate into the same small world, and then just walk the path of cultivation again. They must have their own internal ranking to decide who could enjoy Fatty's flesh and blood first. This way they seriously violated the Heavenly Tao's bottom line, so the Heavenly Tao directly sealed the realm gate. Don't you want to ascend? Then none of you can think of ascending. Anyway, those who had not reincarnated in the underworld were consuming their own souls. Even if they did not discover the abnormality of this small world, after a long time, the Heavenly Tao would naturally be able to make this group of people who violated the bottom line disappear forever. Thinking of this, Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He knew what he had to teach these divine beings who were born at the top of the food chain. Of course, he could not directly tell them what was going on with the heavenly Tao. He recalled the previous plane, all the concepts about the heavenly Tao rules, and recalled some of the Taoist information that he found at Xinying's place. After organizing his words, he officially began his lecture. He talked about the heavenly Tao, the Tao of all beings, human Tao, and even the Tao of self, one by one. Then he found a few Taoist classics such as Tao Te Ching, Peace Sutra, De Tao Luan, and so on to support the stage. He first read them, but worried that they would not understand, he carefully explained them in the vernacular. Chapter 505. Although Lone Moon was already trying his best to teach, logic was logic. Actually, it still depended on the divine race's own understanding. But he did not expect that after he explained it once, there would actually be people who understood it and directly went into meditation on the square. And there were 4 or 5 divine races. The God power around them instantly became many times denser, their bodies began to appear with a soft blue light, and faintly with some heavenly power, causing the divine race beside them to jump in fright. A sense of fear extended from the bottom of their hearts, but different from the fear when they were beaten up before, there was a sense of awe. Lone Moon asked the divine race beside him to be quiet, not to disturb others in meditation, before continuing to preach. With this, more and more people went into meditation. They were divine races in the first place, naturally their qualifications were not bad. Especially after Rabbit's force-feeding teaching a few years ago, it became even easier to understand. Previously it was only because of the influence of the remnant chaos chi. After learning to transform and regulate their breathing, this influence naturally became smaller and smaller. Looking at the square, the God power became more and more abundant, even faintly showing signs of materializing. These few days, there were even several rounds of spirit rain. Even the radishes that Rabbit planted in the back mountain matured in 4 hours. Rabbit's hands were sore from all that. Not to mention the other crazy growing divine Ganoderma and immortal herbs. I Ching really could not watch it anymore. He could only go down the mountain to set up an array, to guide the excess God power out into the ground, or into forming immortal meridians or into the world. He casually asked the former master of Purple Night Palace, Hong Meng, for help. But he did not move, instead looking up at the sky in a daze, his eyes wide and face full of shock, pointing shakily at the sky, revealing an expression that was uncertain whether to be surprised or happy. Lord, Heavenly Tao, it's starting to form. This was too fast. The flow of time here was different, and in order to stabilize the plane, Hong Meng and the others purposely accelerated the time in this side of the world. Actually, ever since Lord helped to split open the plane, it had already been millions of years. But even so, after so many years of hard work, there was no way for the heavenly Tao to be born. How long had it been? But the heavenly Tao was already showing signs of being born. I Ching looked up, sensing carefully only to discover that there was indeed a trace of nomological power in this world. His eyes darkened, he turned to look at the high platform who was still focused on preaching, and instantly understood something. He looked at the person sprawled on the chair beside him, nibbling on a fruit. Master, could Father Nyo be? Xinying's hands paused. She tilted her head and said, Yes, I'm a good leader. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. Raising his head once more to look at a certain person on the elevated platform, Zhang Shen sighed. What else could he do? Who asked him to be my teacher? I can only continue to spoil him. Yes, it was definitely not because Master was lazy. Lone Moon's lecture lasted for more than 10 years. In the beginning, he still seriously explained the textbook in detail, and occasionally interacted with the students. Seeing that more and more people were meditating, he felt a little happy. But no matter how exciting the content was, it would get annoying after 4 or 5 times. Therefore, later on, he simply changed the array formation on the high platform and stuck a few recording talismans on it. The content was the same anyway. But the amazing thing was that this kind of skimpy teaching method was really useful. More and more people were meditating, so Lone Moon continued to play the video with a peace of mind. And because they continued to absorb the God power around them as they listened to the lecture, the influence of the chaos chi in their bodies became less and less. They had long lost the fierce look on their faces when they first came here. They looked much more peaceful and more like the real divine race. He glanced at the square. Everyone was sitting neatly. Even if they were watching the video, they were watching it seriously. There were still some people who were not meditating. Perhaps their comprehension skills were really not good enough. He thought for a moment, then opened the array formation that imprisoned them. The chaos chi in their bodies had already disappeared. Their minds were clear and their consciousness was no longer affected. Naturally, they would understand the benefits of this cultivation. Although their comprehension skills were not good, it was also a good choice to go out and develop more fellow disciples. So it was time to let them out. At first no one dared to move. They thought it was another term assignment to loosen the reins only to grasp better. But some of the bolder ones walked out, and after realizing that everything was fine, they left one after another. The number of people meditating in the square decreased by more than half. The remaining people were only those who had not woken up from their meditation. The duration of meditation depended on each person's understanding. It could be as short as a few hours, or as long as a few hundred or even 1,000 years without waking up. The remaining people included the 12 reincarnated ancient gods. Among them, some were still meditating and some were awake but unwilling to leave. Perhaps they understood something from listening to the lecture. That was why they did not want to leave. Lone Moon did not bother too much. The most worrying thing was still the human race below. This was the first problem that needed to be solved in this plane. The matters of the divine race were basically on the right track. There was no need to worry too much. It was time to go to the human race to take a look. He directly brought the chief master and disciple away, leaving the other three behind. Now he was relieved. Although there were many divine race people in this square, Hong Meng and Fatty were both ancient gods. Even if something happened, they could at least escape. As for Rabbit, there was even less to worry about. Those divine race people now trembled when they saw it, afraid that it would speak. The psychological trauma was even more terrifying. Following the direction that Hong Meng pointed, they came to the human territory that was isolated. Only when they arrived did they realize that it was indeed far away from the battlefield of the gods. There was even a large sea area in between. The entire continent was sealed off by Hong Meng using a special sorcery, just like how God Fiend specially drew out the outer realm. The entire continent was surrounded by a huge barrier that blocked all the overly powerful living beings outside, including the divine race. Lone Moon directly released his divine perception to scan the area. He found that the situation was better than he imagined. Perhaps because Hong Meng isolated the continent in time, the number of human race people was not small. It was not smaller than the total population of the small worlds in their plane. He originally thought that he would see a primitive society. Unexpectedly, it was no different from the small worlds from before. There was even a national language and so on. Apart from the smaller scale, it was no different from the other plane. Let's go down and take a look. He pointed to the nearest forest outside the town and directly flew down. The few of them were just about to leave the forest when suddenly 4 or 5 people jumped out, looking at the 3 of them with a guarded expression. Who are you? Each of them was holding a knife, axe or other metal weapon in their hands. They all aimed at the 3 of them. Lone Moon. Were they being robbed? Chapter 506. Seeing that they didn't respond, the leader, a tall and strong man, waved the knife in his hand and shouted, "Where did you come from? Do you have a travel permit?" Travel permit? Lone Moon was stunned. So it wasn't a robbery. He quickly put on a professional smile. Big brother, who's your big brother? The man interrupted him directly, his eyes even more guarded. Cut the crap, hurry up and take the travel permit, otherwise don't blame us for being rude. Lone Moon was speechless. This was the first time in his life that he encountered a failure in a negotiation. He was just thinking about what the travel permit looked like and whether he should directly make one for the other party to see. Hurry up. Another younger man at the side also urged, and even glanced at Shining who was closest to him. Travel permit. No. Shining tilted her head but handed over a fruit. Do you want the fruit? Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Shining. Don't make trouble, who would want your fruit, and the one in your hand, isn't it the one that wasn't ripe last time, the one that you wanted to give to him but didn't? Can't you show some sincerity when you treat people to food? He was about to explain, the man opposite glanced at the fruit, turned to the others and said, "This person is fine." With that said, he took the fruit and even pulled Shining to his side, and then continued to take out his weapon, pointing it at him and Chef. Lone Moon, I Ching, how could this be freaking possible? Where's yours? The man continued to look at the 2 fiercely, grabbed the weapon in his hand and shouted, "Those without a travel permit are transformed from those man-eating monsters. Catch them." As soon as he finished speaking, the others all took up their weapons ready to stab. Wait. Lone Moon thought of something in a flash, the corner of his mouth twitched, and then took out a bag of pastries and handed it over. Chef also reacted and took out half a pork knuckle. Those people took it suspiciously, picked it up and tasted it, then put away their weapons. If you have a travel permit, you should have said so earlier. It wouldn't be good if there was a misunderstanding. The leading man looked at the two with some dissatisfaction, as if blaming them for being too slow. He thought for a while and added, "But your travel permits are quite delicious. How do you make them?" Lone Moon, I Ching, are you sure you're checking for directions and not robbing? Alas, the town hasn't been peaceful recently. That's why the checks on the people who come and go are stricter. The man sighed and continued, "You're not from here, right? Please don't be offended. We're doing this for the sake of the town's safety." Lone Moon regained his composure and immediately stepped forward. He resumed his businesslike smile and asked, "You're flattering me. This is how it should be. We can understand. May I ask, Big Brother, what has happened in this town?" "It's all because of those monsters." The man sighed and said, "Recently more than a dozen people have gone missing in the town, so we are strictly checking the road passes." "All right, don't stay here any longer. Hurry up and enter the city. It'll be easier to bump into them when it gets dark." After saying that, he waved his hand to urge them. Lone Moon did not continue asking. He pulled Shin Ing and Chef towards the direction of the town. He vaguely guessed that the monster they were talking about should be something like a demon or a spirit beast, and one that could transform. But he did not know why its food was a road pass. When they reached the town, he looked up. There was indeed some demonic chi left in the town, but the demon might have already left. He turned to a peddler who wrote "selling road passes," and asked. Only then did he know that demons' food was humans, so they usually did not bring other food with them. And most demons retained their bestial nature. They were selfish and protective of their food. They would not share their food with others. So they used this method to distinguish between real and fake. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched when he heard this method. This method could at most identify some little demons who did not understand the world. If they really wanted to harm people, it would be strange if they could. But thinking about it carefully, there were no cultivators in this plane. It was already not easy for them to think of this method. Could he say that it was fortunate that there was a chef in their team? Otherwise, they would probably be thought of as accomplices of the monsters. The three of them walked around the town for a day. They basically knew the situation on the side of the human race. When Hongmeng isolated the human race, they only cared about the chaos of the divine race. They forgot that there were also demons, beasts and so on in this world. So the human race was still quite dangerous. Their biggest advantage was the advantage of numbers. When they met the alien races, they basically had no power to resist. Just like the demon that had already eaten more than 10 people in this town. They might not be able to defeat it if they really faced it. The final solution was to move away from here. Therefore, the best way to solve this problem was to teach the human race how to cultivate, so that they could have the ability to protect themselves when facing demons and ghosts. In other words, their school had to continue. They might even have to open a second branch. "Father Nyo, are we going to advertise again?" I Ching asked subconsciously. "Of course we have to advertise. Wait, why did you pull out your sword?" Seeing that Chef had summoned his sword out of habit, Lone Moon hurriedly pressed it down. "Not advertising?" I Ching tilted his head. "Tell me, who are we going to fight this time? I'll be in charge of fighting." "You'll be in charge of advertising. Who said we're going to fight?" "No, I'm not talking about advertising. I don't mean fighting." What was he so excited about? I Ching was stunned. Didn't the divine race beat them up last time? Wasn't advertising a verb? Fighting is only suitable for the divine race. Lone Moon glared at him. How can civilized people like us draw our swords so easily? Not even a kitchen knife. Then what should we do? Same rules. Let's build a sect first. Human cultivators should be much easier to teach than the divine race. After all, people who lived under the shadow of demons and ghosts all year round should be easier to deceive. No, recruit. All right. I Ching nodded. After thinking for a while, he took out a map and said, "This is the map of the human race that I asked Hongmeng for before we left. If you want to build a sect, you can choose a location based on this map." Lone Moon took a look. Indeed, it was the whole picture of this isolated continent. It was surrounded by the sea and was independent of the entire plain. He did not choose within the continent. Instead, he chose an immortal mountain near the coast. Seeing that he had chosen, I Ching continued. "When I came out, I caught a newborn immortal meridian at the foot of the mountain. If we build a sect here, we can plant the immortal meridian here. Yes, this place is isolated all year round. Compared to other places, the spirit chi is indeed too thin. Not to mention the divine race's territory that was full of god power. Not bad. It's hard for you to think of collecting an immortal meridian. Wait. Chapter 507. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and scanned Chef from head to toe. Why do I feel like you're acting weird recently? It's one thing that you're not following Shining around and causing trouble, but you're even helping her? He was too obedient. Tell me, what did the two of you do? I Ching stiffened for a moment, still maintaining his poker face. His eyes turned towards Shining and then he shook his head hard. No, we didn't do anything shameful. Are you wrong? You've already said it out loud. Don't turn your face away if you dare. With that said, he reached out and said, take out the storage bag. I Ching hesitated for a moment, but finally handed it over. He opened it to take a look. Apart from a pile of ingredients and cooking utensils, there was only a pitiful sword stuffed in the corner. It was so clean that there wasn't even a spirit stone. Lone Moon was still worried. He turned and reached out to Shining. And yours? I don't need to go through security check, do I? Shining grabbed her bag tightly. You have to go through security check. All right, you have to return it to me. She quickly took out a few fruits and held them in her hands before handing them over. Lone Moon opened it to take a look and his mouth twitched. He had thought it was just an ordinary storage bag, but when he opened it, there was a huge storage space inside, almost as big as a small mystic realm. Not only that, there was really a place inside that could be planted and a forest of spirit fruit trees. No wonder Shining didn't go to pick the fruits even though she didn't stop eating. So it was planted here. Needless to say, this small mystic realm that looked like a storage bag was definitely secretly given to her by Chef to cultivate. Not to mention the mountains of snacks and pastries. Was she going through winter? How much food did she stock up? More importantly, some of them even he had never seen before. This little bastard who ate all the food alone. She actually had the cheek to snatch food from him. That was too much. I'm not confiscating half. He waved his hand and took away half of the food inside, along with the ripe fruits on the tree. That's it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon stuffed the half-empty bag back and turned to walk across the street. Motherf asterisk her. Master, don't be anxious. Seeing that he had walked far away, I Ching silently took out a storage bag that looked exactly the same as the one he had just seen and sent a voice transmission. Your bag is here. The one that Father Nyo searched just now was just a spare. Good chef. Shining immediately took it. And thank goodness there was a bigger one. Master. I Ching looked at Lone Moon, who had already walked far away, and said hesitantly, Father Nyo, did you see something? We still have to continue. That gave him a fright. Shining looked up at him and patted his shoulder. Up until now, everything is fine. But if in the future, don't worry, he is Father Nyo. What should I do now that I'm even more worried? He would definitely flip out, he definitely would. What are you two waiting for? Lone Moon turned back and called out to the two of them, we'll stay here tonight. I've already booked a room. Hurry over. Yes, Father Nyo, no problem, Father Nyo. He decided that he had to stock up more food for his master now. Who knows, he might really run out of food in the future. The night was dark like water and the full moon hung high in the sky. Perhaps because there was a monster outside the town causing trouble, the town was already silent at night. Under the moonlight, wisps of demonic chi began to appear in the forest outside the town. Lone Moon pulled I Ching and Shining out of the town, searching for the wisp of demonic chi that he felt during the day, and headed straight for the forest. Immortal cultivators had not started appearing in this plain yet, so the best way to spread the word was to subdue this demon and let the people in the town know what a cultivator was. He had already noticed during the day that the one causing trouble in this town was only a small demon. Its demonic chi was very weak and it was hiding in this forest. Lone Moon originally thought that it would take them a while to find it. Unexpectedly, less than 2 minutes after the three of them entered the forest, a figure came out of the forest and fell in front of them. When it fell, it hit a rock and even moved to the side before letting out a cry of pain. Aya, Lone Moon, Shining, I Ching, perhaps seeing that the three of them were indifferent and had no intention of going forward to help it up, the fallen figure did not get up, and then let out an even louder cry. Ayaya. Aya, hey, it hurts. The three of them still did not move. Finally, the other could not take it anymore and turned to look at them. With some surprise and a little anger, it reminded them, "Aren't you going to help me up?" The three of them exchanged a look and then replied in unison, "No." This was different from what they had thought. "What exactly do you want?" Lone Moon glanced at it. Did it think they were blind? Not to mention this pretentious performance, this was obviously a demon, right? Even if it did not know how to transform, it should at least cover that huge squirrel tail behind it. That was an insult to their intelligence, okay? The squirrel demon was stunned for a moment, completely unaware that it had been exposed. Seeing that they had no intention of helping it, it could only get up by itself. It patted the dust off its clothes and picked up the bamboo basket on the ground. As if afraid of exposing its identity, it even pulled the hat on its head and wrapped itself in a loose outer robe, except for its tail. Cough. "Thank you, kind people." It coughed and continued to speak with a childish and flustered voice. "Since you helped me up and I happened to pick some rare good mushrooms, why not? We didn't help you up." Before it could finish, Lone Moon interrupted it directly. The squirrel demon, whose rhythm was interrupted, was stunned, and a trace of panic flashed across its face. It was stunned for a moment, ignoring his exposing, and continued to act. "No, you just help me. I will sell you the mushrooms. Look, I just picked them." With that said, it held the basket in its hands and extended it towards them. They saw that in its basket there was really a basket of mushrooms, one red and one white. The red one was still faintly suffused with a trace of demonic aura, and the other was a spirit plant with spirit chi. Lone Moon glanced at the squirrel demon. "What kind of mushrooms do you want to sell?" The squirrel demon was delighted, and the words "scheme has succeeded" were clearly written on its face. It quickly took out the red one and said, This one. After thinking about it, it was a little worried, so it picked up another white one and added, "You have to buy this one too, but you have to eat the red one first. After eating it, you can eat the white one when you wake up in the morning. You can only buy one kind." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. "You mean if I eat this red one, I will only wake up after a night of coma?" "Yes. But you still have to eat the white one, otherwise it will be very uncomfortable." The squirrel demon nodded honestly. "I see." Lone Moon nodded. "Is this your first time coming out to cheat people?" Chapter 508. How did you know? The squirrel demon answered subconsciously, then reacted and looked at him with wide eyes, panicking. You. It stuttered for a long time but did not get an answer. Tears gathered in its eyes and it looked like it was about to cry. After a while, it asked carefully with a sobbing voice, "Do you want to buy mushrooms?" The three of them. Such bad acting skills, which school did he graduate from? It did not give up and handed 2 mushrooms, one red and one white, to Lone Moon. "Just buy a pair, okay? Or I can give it to you." Seeing that they did not take it, it panicked and immediately took the whole basket. "I'll give you all the white ones, I took a long time to pick them. Just buy one red one, okay?" "No." He directly revealed his identity. "You're a demon, right?" How did you know?" The squirrel stiffened, a trace of panic flashed in its eyes, but it still held the basket stubbornly. "Then do you want to buy mushrooms?" "No." Was this a retard? It did not forget to sell mushrooms at this time. The squirrel became even more anxious and turned to hand the basket to Shining. "Do you want to buy one?" Shining looked down. "I don't want vegetables." It could only raise it to chef. I don't make vegetables." The squirrel's face turned pale as if the sky had fallen. The blue chest in its hand loosened, and immediately the mushrooms fell to the ground. The whole demon did not feel good. It sat directly on the ground and broke down crying. "What? There's no time, why doesn't anyone buy my mushrooms? Little Flower will be eaten. It's all my fault, I can't save her, wah." It howled in grief and tears streamed down its face like beans. Its originally short body shrunk into a ball, and its large tail slapped the ground again and again. It did not even care about hiding its identity now. It let its hat fall, revealing 2 drooping triangular ears. Shining, I Ching, Lone Moon, the demons of this plane were like this? Why did they have a sense of guilt like bullying a child? "Don't cry." Lone Moon had a headache and couldn't help but say, "I want to cry." It howled even louder, "Little Flower is going to be eaten, it's all my fault. I hurt her." What little flower? Hey, if you cry again I'll take care of you. Is this a child? Accept me. Anyway, little flower is gone, and I don't want to live anymore. Holy shit, is this little demon addicted to crying? Just as he was about to conjure a hand seal, Shining stepped forward and stuffed the fruit into his mouth. As soon as the crying stopped, the world fell silent. Mushroom, who wants to eat your little flower? Shining squatted down and asked. The squirrel demon was stunned and looked at her with teary eyes. Holding the fruit in his mouth with both hands, he replied pitifully, I'm a squirrel, not a mushroom. After saying that, he did not forget to hold the fruit in his hands and bite into it while sniffing and answering, It's the Tiger King. He caught Little Flower. There were other demons here. Who is Little Flower? Shining continued to ask. Little Flower is my best friend. The squirrel nodded as if emphasizing. She's like you, she will give me delicious food. When I was still a little squirrel, I lived on the tree next to her house. She would give me a big pine nut every day. He's so good looking. I look just like him now. Lone Moon was stunned. He took a look at its incomplete form. That little flower was a human? But later, she was caught by the Tiger King. It looked sad again. The Tiger King said that if I could bring other people back to him, he would return Little Flower to me. I waited here every day, but those people were afraid of me and refused to go back with me. So, I wanted to use mushrooms. Yesterday the Tiger King said that if I didn't bring people back, he would eat Little Flower. The more it spoke, the softer its voice became and its head drooped lower and lower. Finally it looked at them, unwilling to give up. You really don't intend to buy a mushroom? You've already said your purpose, who would buy it? Alright, bring us to that tiger demon. Lone Moon said directly. We'll help you save Little Flower. If he guessed correctly, that tiger demon was the one that had been causing trouble in the town recently. And this squirrel didn't have any bloody resentment on it. It seemed that it had never harmed anyone. The Little Flower he was talking about should also be a human. Really? Its eyes lit up and then darkened again. But, the Tiger King is very powerful. Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to explain to it. He directly picked it up with one hand and flew up on his sword. Where? The squirrel was startled and quickly hugged its tail, then weakly pointed to the right. The few of them flew in the direction pointed by the squirrel. The tiger demon's lair wasn't far. They arrived in less than 2 minutes. Before they got close, they smelled a strong bloody smell from afar. It even overshadowed the demonic aura that wasn't very strong. Lone Moon looked at the cave entrance that emitted an unpleasant stench, frowned and walked in. The squirrel was already scared out of its wits. It slipped to the back, thought about it and turned to hide behind Shining. Those who gave it fruits were all good people. Once they entered the cave, the bloody smell inside was even stronger and even a little choking. There was a faint cracking sound under their feet. I Ching turned his hand and summoned a ball of fire. It instantly lit up the cave. The cave wasn't very big and one could see everything at a glance. The tiger demon wasn't in the cave. The whole cave was filled with bones of all kinds of beasts but more of humans. Some had become white bones and some still had flesh and blood, emitting waves of stench. Great, the Tiger King isn't here. The squirrel looked happy. He rushed out in an instant and began to search in the cave. Little Flower, where's Little Flower? I'm here to save you, Little Flower. It shouted for a long time but there was no response. It began to search in a panic and even began to pick up the bones on the ground. Lone Moon frowned, grabbed the squirrel demon and dragged it out. Let's go out first. No, I want to save Little Flower. The squirrel struggled but was still dragged out. Let me go. There's no living person inside. Lone Moon glared at it and sighed. How long has your Little Flower been caught? The squirrel was stunned and then counted with his fingers. 4, 5, 6. I don't know. But the Tiger King promised to let me exchange for her. She's long dead. Looking at the situation in the cave, the tiger demon wouldn't leave anyone alive at all. It was just lying to this squirrel. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.